Welcome in, everybody. Today is Tuesday, the 7th of January, 2020. My name's Carey Holzman, and welcome in to my latest live broadcast. And I see we have some people already in the chat, eagerly anticipating the opening of the show. And that's done. All right, so today I'm going to do a review of the ORICO portable NVMe solid-state drive, 512 gigs. I love flash drives. I have an illness when it comes to flash drives. I have a little mountain of flash drives, all different sizes, different shapes, different colors, different ways of caps and capless. Every variant of every USB, USB 1, 2, 3, and of course even Thunderbolt. Now, what is my sickness with flash drives? They're incredibly convenient, very, very fast, very reliable when you're coming from a world of floppy disks and zip disks and CDs and DVDs. They're so much more capacious. They're larger. They have more capacity. And one of the things that discourages people from making a full image backup is how much time it takes. Some people, you know, even as little as 20 or 30 gigs, let's say a clean install of Windows 10 like we did here on this computer, on a mechanical external hard drive, you're moving the data probably 20, 25 megabytes a second, which is very slow. In comparison to moving the data to a USB 3 or 3.1 flash drive, which, as we've discussed before, you can make your own by buying SSD enclosures. The problem with that, however, is, of course, they're physically larger in size. So if you want something that is very, very small, but also has the capacity and the speed, well, now you want something like this. And that's why I'm interested in it. This is a great device, in theory, should be a great device for moving large quantities of data very, very quickly, whether that's system images or, in my case, I may have video project files I've got to get over to my sister for editing, and being able to copy them over here. There's nothing more frustrating for me than saying, I'm going to copy those files and I'm going to head your direction and bring you the files. And then my computer says 30 minutes remaining for the copy to complete, and it's holding me up from being able to leave to go, take care of this task. So I kick myself in the butt thinking, oh, I should have did this last night. I should have just set it and went to bed. With this, I should be able to copy the same amount of files in a fraction of the time and be able to get on with my life and do it last minute, without having to plan ahead. And furthermore, to use it as a permanent backup source, so I can have something that's very small, very fast, that won't be discouraging for me updating it with like a Cronus trimmage, something like that, to make sure that I have a current backup. So these can serve numerous other purposes as well, but those are just two examples. And I just, I use flash drives like crazy around here, whether I've got Windows 10 or Memtest 86 as bootable utilities, or I've got, a Cronus, or I use them to update BIOSes all the time, as you've seen here. I also use them, as I mentioned, to copy large files. Sometimes putting it up onto a shared space in the cloud can take way too long. It depends how many files I'm moving. So let's open up this portable NVMe SSD and take a look at what's in the box. I also want to mention that as I am filming this right now, there's a bunch of journalists hanging out in Las Vegas at the Consumer Electronics Show. And so I'm sure ORICO is there, and this is probably one of their new products they're showing off there. So I'd rather be here testing it than in Vegas fighting all the crowds and paying $25 for a hot dog. All right, let's see what's in the package here. Now, I've got a link to ORICO. They make a lot of PC peripherals. That link is in the video notes below the video. I also have a link to Amazon that has this product, which currently sells, this is a brand new product. It comes in 3 different sizes. There's a 64 gig, a 128 gig, and a 512 gig. So as of today, Let me tell you what those prices are, and expect these prices to be different if you're watching this video months or years from now. Here it is. So this product is at Amazon for $139.99, $139.99. And this is NVMe storage, right? So if you were buying an enclosure and buying a 512 gig M.2, make sure it's NVMe to do your price comparison. And then keep in mind the size difference. This is going to be a smaller device. And that may or may not matter to you, but something to keep in mind. So yeah, it's on Amazon right now at $139.99. There's a little coupon they're offering currently that'll give you 10% off. I don't know how long that coupon's good for, but it's there today. And everything I'm basing it on is here in the United States. I don't know about pricing or availability or coupons in other countries. But if you want to share your experience in the comments, certainly feel free to. So I've got the wrap removed from it, and let's take that off and put that over there. And inside, we've got the flash drive, which looks pretty well as pictured. Now, to give you an idea of the size comparison, this is the SanDisk USB flash drive. This is 256 gigs and sells for about $70. And this is just a regular flash drive. This only moves data. When I say only, it's still pretty quick, around 350 megabytes a second. This will move data, what they say is up to 940 megabytes a second. And if I bought two of these, that would equal 512 gigs. This is 512 gigs. Two of these would be $140 and run at 340 megabytes a second or so, right in there. I'll be generous. Let's say it even runs at 400 megabytes a second. Or I can get this and run the data up to 940 megabytes a second for the same price as two of these, which I would need to match the capacity of this. And further, other NVMe drives I've tested that are external, some of them require Thunderbolt because you can go twice as fast with Thunderbolt. Unfortunately, Thunderbolt 3. But unfortunately, not many computers have Thunderbolt. So for me to be able to take data to somebody else's computer, odds are they're not going to have a Thunderbolt port. So the Thunderbolt devices are good for me and my personal backups because it's fast, but it doesn't do me much good as far as servicing other computers or moving files from one place to another because it's so infrequent to run into a Thunderbolt 3 plug. So anyway, everybody's got USB. This is USB, and you're going to ask yourself, how do you plug it in? Well, there's a USB Type-C connector, and it looks like a little LED next to it, so it lets you know when it's active, reading or writing. And somewhere in this box, I'm sure we have some cables and some documentation. I want to remind you, all these videos are live. I've done no research on this product other than just the basic marketing points. I don't know what to expect, specifically from the product. I know what other USB devices typically have performance-wise and price-wise. But what I'm trying to do here on my channel is replicate the experience you would have at home, which is most of us get a package in the mail where you rip it right open and skip the instructions and get right to using it because we're all impatient and we're all, want to get things done. So I'm here to replicate that. Now, inside we've got a USB Type-C cable that's Type-C on one side and Type-A on the other, and that is probably going to be the most common that you would use on computers in general, like every computer that'll plug and play with. Then we've got just a Type-C to Type-C, and most newer computers will have Type-C built into the back of the motherboard if your computer's within the 2 years old or so. And newer computer cases also offer the Type-C connector up front. Now the benefit of the Type-C is that it supports the USB Gen 2, USB 3.2 Gen 2, I believe. So if you want the fastest speeds and you're not sure which USB port represents the fastest speeds, because some of these motherboards will have USB 2, and then USB 3.0 or 3.1, or now as they're calling it 3.2. And you'll see there's USB ports that are black, and some are blue, and some are red, and you're like, oh, which one is the fast one? Well, if you've got a Type-C, use it, because that'll be your fastest port. Finally, in the box, ooh, that was loud. In the box, we've got a little card here from ORICO. And on the flip side, there's QR codes, which I'm not quite sure if those are for the documentation or just takes you to the website. Maybe just the website. And then our documentation here, which really we shouldn't need. This is all you get. Yeah, declarations and FCC claim, disclaimers that have to be by U.S. law included. Take up a lot of space in that documentation. But this should literally be a plug-and-play scenario, and we'll just take these cables out of the package. Here's our Type-C to Type-C. Just plug that in just like that. And it's a good, strong connection, so we don't have to worry about that falling out. Some of the create your own USB flash drives, those things can be pretty heavy, and I've seen it where the cables don't like to stay in. So again, the smaller it is, the lighter it is, and this is the same cable that would be used on either device, and you can see how much better that cable holds onto that because it's so lightweight. And then we've got the other cable here, which I'll just take out and keep handy. What I'm gonna test on is I built this machine recently. It's a AMD. It's an ASRock Z390 Phantom Gaming 7 motherboard, and I just recently built this. And while I've got it here, I'm gonna use it as a testing machine, at least for another day before I have to surrender it to the customer. But it's part of my quality control test. Make sure that the customer's machine's running well by using it for other things. Hey, if it doesn't work, I'd rather find out now. Okay, I sort of prepped for the video by getting this machine hooked up. So I've got the keyboard and mouse, HDMI cable, power cable. There's no internet connection. Switch is in the on position. The case is the Be Quiet Pure Bass 500. Let's turn this on, and we'll go to camera 2, which is the screen capture. In fact, let me put myself right over there. Okay, so now we've got the desktop up and running. And I want to remind all of you that I've never used this product before. I know basically what to expect based on, as I mentioned, previous experience, but we're going to test it here live and get a real-world reaction and overview of what this product is like. I'm going to use a piece of software I use to test flash drives. I've mentioned this piece of software before. It's called H2 Test W. Yeah, it just rolls right off the tongue. I've got a link to it in the notes below this video. It's a free, very small download. And I've already downloaded it and I've put it on this flash drive. Because remember, I use flash drives to move data, etc., from one computer to another, as I'm doing right now. I do this all the time. And this should be it right here, I believe. Copy that out to the desktop. So anytime I buy a new flash drive, I always run this software on it to verify there's nothing wrong with the flash drive and to verify I didn't get a counterfeit flash drive. Some unscrupulous folks will modify the firmware of the flash drive to make it report it's larger than it actually is. It'll say, hi, I'm 512 gigs. And then you go to put 512 gigs on it, it fails after 64 gigs. Because what they did is they just changed the label, the label that's encoded into the drive which is me basically telling you I weigh 75 pounds. I don't, but I can say I do. Put me on a scale, you'll find that's not true. So in the same way, if you're buying flash drives from third-party sellers, whether it's through a reputable retailer or e-tailer, or, and especially at places like eBay, although this is pretty rampant on Amazon too. If you're looking at, say, 512 gig flash drives and they're under $40, I can pretty much guarantee you all of those are fake and they will not work. They'll work up to a certain point, like 64 gigs or 128 gigs maybe. And beyond that, you filled it up and it'll just report errors because they've tricked the computer into thinking that the flash drive is larger than it really is. So be aware of that. And even when I get a flash drive that comes straight from the manufacturer that I know is not fraudulent, like this one, I still want to test it and make sure it's operational, that it's, you know, I don't want to find out that some of the cells are bad and I won't find it out till I reach the end of the capacity, right? So I might have been using this for months before I actually start to fill it up. So what H2 Test W will do is it'll write across the entire capacity of the flash drive and then read back what it wrote to verify it matches. So let's do that now. First of all, I'm going to use the Type-C connector. Let's get this flash drive out of here. I'm done with that one. And we'll plug this in. Yeah, we got a Type-C back here. Great thing about USB Type-C is it'll go in either direction. You don't have to worry about getting it upside down. Now here, in fact, let me make my screen a little bigger so I know you guys can see, I can't see. So let me go full screen on my side here. Ah, much better. So it comes up, it says it's a GV100. I'm not sure what that means. And if we right click on this, it's 476 gigs free, which is 511,989,000. It's basically 512 gigs, right? 512 gigs. I usually turn indexing off for flash drives that are formatted in NTFS. And we're going to do a couple of things. First, I'm going to run Crystal Disk Mark Portable. Now, there's a link to this directly in the video notes below. This is a free piece of software. There is 2 versions or 3 versions of this software. I always like the portable version, so there's nothing to install. So we'll bring up Crystal Disk Mark. We'll run the 64-bit version of the latest Crystal Disk Mark, which as of today is version 7.0.0F. We're going to select the D drive here, and then we're going to run all the tests. And this will take a couple minutes to run. I'd be very interested to see what these numbers look like. Looks like we've got 595 people watching live right now, and a contribution has just come in from, there it is, Thomas Robinson's contributed £2. Hey, thank you, Thomas. Michael Brooks contributed $10. He says the motherboard is on its way to you. Michael just sent me a 110 series motherboard to match the 7700 CPU that he sent me, so that'll be great. We'll find a use for that. Tristan Dibellis contributed $1. Thank you, Tristan. Russ, the PC Dr. Martin, has contributed $5. He says, hey, Carey, my uncle's new machine is moving right along. Started assembly today. Right on. Bear Paws contributed £2. He says, I'm enjoying all the fabulous content. And Randall Doms has contributed $10 and says, have a great show. Right on. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, I'm a little concerned I'm not getting any numbers reported back on this drive. The light is blinking like crazy on it. Well, you can see that. There's a little light on it. And not getting any numbers back. I have seen some flash drives that Crystal Disk Mark doesn't play well with. And that's not a real big concern for me because I can run the ATTO Disk Mark disk benchmark instead. I don't believe it's an issue with the device. I've seen this happen before, and I get impatient. So it may be that if I let it run long enough, that it'll eventually bring me up numbers. But the whole point of this is performance, it's speed. And we're not off to a good start, but I want to couch that concern by saying it's probably Crystal Disk Mark. It can do this. So I'm going to give the device the benefit of the doubt, and we'll try a different benchmark. I do believe I've got the ATTO benchmark on another flash drive. Let me stop this test first and foremost. Just hit stop here. And I need this, the word stop will go away when the benchmark is actually stopped. So this is why I do things live, right? Because if this was the typical YouTube channel that evaluates and reviews things, they would edit this stuff out, you know? But this is my real experience. This is my real life first experience with this product. This benchmark is what I use all the time. So it's a little disconcerting, but at the same time, not completely unfamiliar. I've seen this happen with other flash drives, particularly flash drives. It generally never happens with hard drives. It's just it has something to do with the way Crystal Disk Mark is processing the benchmark. That's all I know. Coggens just contributed £5. He says, another classic. Right on, thank you. Gary says, maybe it needs formatting. No, we just looked at the drive. We saw that it was empty. We saw its capacity. We already did all that. So what I'm going to do is just wait for this test to finish so I can do my next thing here, if it'll stop. See, and this is a fault of Crystal Disk Mark as well. Crystal Disk Mark is free, but a better piece of software would stop when I tell it to stop. It seems that it gets kind of hung up on itself. And I'm pretty sure I've got the ATTO benchmark. Stop. You know what? I'm going to just restart this computer because this computer is so fast, it'll take me less time to restart than to wait for Crystal Disk Mark to respond. So watch how fast this will go. It's just going to shut down and reboot real quick. And then what we'll do is I've got the ATTO benchmark software somewhere. Let me see if it's on this flash drive. See, even the restart, I can see the USB flash drive is still blinking. So in a case like that, I'm going to go extreme because I'm really, really impatient today. We're just going to cut power to it. That kills it. It's no big deal. Flip it back on. Now, you'll see how fast it boots. Great thing about a brand new build is I can't screw it up. All right, let's take a look at whether or not I have that ATTO benchmark. I should have it here. Looking through my server for it. Is it under freeware? No. Ah, yeah, it is. ATTO disk benchmark. We'll copy that over onto the flash drive. There we go. And then we'll bring the flash drive out. Plug it in over here. And then we'll grab it from there and copy it to the desktop. I like to run these things from the desktop just to make sure, you know, if it's a performance test, that it's not in any way or shape or form having the results altered because it's reading from the flash drive from time to time. I don't know, some benchmarks do that. So let me get rid of that flash drive. Like I said, I just want this to be as pure as possible, and other USB devices, even being plugged in, can impact, in theory, the performance of other USB devices. So for the most accurate test possible, I guess I have to install this. So now I should have that ATTO benchmark here. There it is. And I will select the D drive, and we'll hit start. We'll take a look at what these numbers are here. Oh, that's not good. I think, because before when we clicked on this external drive, it showed us the capacity, and I think what Crystal Disk Mark was doing was writing some files to the drive, and then of course I shut it down in the process of that. It probably corrupted it. So we're just going to do a format, even though it was previously formatted. A quick format should be all we need. Now you can imagine right out of the gate, if you were replicating what I'm doing, and this is your brand new $140 flash drive, you might be freaking out going, I think I got a bad flash drive. And it's very easy to blame hardware when it was probably something caused by software. But we're going to find out here in a minute for sure, one way or the other. It's taking quite a while to do some of these basic tasks, which has me a little bit concerned that something's not quite right. I don't know if it'll let me cancel this. So it gets into these write cycles, and I can see the flash drive is blinking blue, so it's doing something. Format could not be, the format could not be interrupted. Let's hit retry again. I just may need to be more patient, so I'm gonna slow down a little bit here, and let's cancel it. Let's cancel that. And I want to try one other thing here, and that is sometimes, like this flash drive is still doing something, and that has me a little concerned, so I'm going to just unplug it because I don't know what's going on. And give that a second, and we'll plug it right back in. And we'll say format. Okay. Now there's a couple of different ways for me to fix the damage I just caused to it. I couldn't have anticipated that was going to happen with Crystal Disk Mark, but I could have been more patient and waited for Crystal Disk Mark to stop. You know, it would eventually stop. Then likely it wouldn't have corrupted the flash drive, but it's just a software corruption. It's not a hardware corruption. And sometimes these software corruptions, they confuse the operating system, and then the result is what we're seeing now. So I want to emphasize that this is a user-created issue. However, Crystal Disk Mark should have worked with it, but I do believe the fault is on Crystal Disk Mark. Now, I'm trying to be patient and letting this thing do whatever it needs to do. It's getting a little bit warm. The light is solid on it now. It's not blinking. Typically, you want to see it blinking, that it's doing something. It should neither be on nor off. And the worst thing you can do with a flash drive is to plug it in while it's reading or writing, or cut the power like I did. But when it's all new equipment, you know, I don't really care about it. It's not likely to happen. It's not likely to cause any physical problem. It's just likely to cause software corruption. And that apparently is what's happened. Although I believe it happened through Crystal Disk Mark. But I am quickly losing my patience on this because, again, this is supposed to be fast. And what we're seeing here is far from that. So what I want to do at this point is I'm going to just unplug it again, which again, bad idea. I'm going to try the other USB cable in another USB port just to see if that makes any difference at all. Let's see if this does any different. Much better. So all I did was change the USB port. So now I'm curious, because I'm a glutton for punishment, if the diskmark benchmark will run on it. So all those were previous messages that I didn't close from before. You can see the drive is formatted. Let's do Crystal Diskmark one more time. No, hold on. Changing my mind. Let's run the ATTO disk benchmark now. I'll hit start. And we'll see what kind of numbers we get through the regular USB 3.1. And this is functioning, this is working, we are getting numbers right now. As the files get larger, it starts writing small files, ATTO does, and then you'll see the lines getting longer as it reaches the bottom. And that's because our performance numbers are going to be bigger when you're copying bigger files. Smaller files, there's more administrative work to be done with regards to marking the indexing tables and partition tables of file locations. And typically, every drive has a sweet spot over how it performs the best with a certain file size. And depending on how much cache it's got and the type of NAND memory that it's using, this is supposed to be 3D NAND memory in this. And you can see where the numbers so far, reads and writes are at about 170 megabytes per second on an 8K file. Each time the file size doubles, right? So we started at 512 bytes, then 1 kilobyte, then 2 kilobytes, 4, 8, 16, 32. And notice on the right side it says write and read. And you'll see as the files are getting bigger, so are the read and write speeds. So ATTO is a bit different of a benchmark than Crystal Diskmark in that Crystal Diskmark sort of has these fixed numbers, 4 different fixed file sizes that it's measuring. And I typically focus on the main sequential reads and writes. In other words, I want to see what's the best this drive can do in ideal conditions. Now, how the end user ends up using it is beyond my control, but very few of us use the drive the same way every time. We will do a little bit of writing small files, and we'll do a little bit of writing medium-sized files. We'll do a little bit of writing large files. And some of us do more of one of those three than the others, but mostly we do all three as needed. And so what I'm looking for when I benchmark the drive is to just go, best case scenario, what's the best I can do? So right now at a 2 megabyte file or a 1 megabyte file, our reads and writes, actually from 512K to 2 megs, and even to 4 megs, our reads and writes are identical at around 430, right in there. And it may be that I'm not plugged into the fastest USB port, because this flash drive, or this external, technically it's an external solid state NVMe drive, should be capable of twice those numbers, twice that. Instead of 420, we should see 940. Well, I guess that would be 840. But we should be seeing over 900. If I got 925, I wouldn't complain that it wasn't at 940. But I am going to complain if I'm at 400 and change and I'm not getting anywhere near 900, something's not right. Remember, the flash drive will only run as fast as the USB port that you plug it into. So if you've got a computer that's 12 years old and it's only got USB 2 on it, this can't go any faster than the USB 2 specs on your system. And likewise, if you had a USB 2 flash drive from 10 years ago and you plug it into your brand new computer you just built with USB, Type C 3.2, it won't go any faster than it's capable of running, the flash drive is capable of running. So whichever of those two is the slowest is going to be the fastest it can run at, right? It's kind of logical. Now, if we look at the numbers, you can see the performance numbers from ATTO are virtually identical from 512K all the way to 64 megabytes. That's pretty impressive. I don't really recall seeing a drive perform like this before. Now, let's take a look one more time at Crystal Disk Mark Portable right there. And let's see what it says. And it should run this time. So we'll go to drive D, and we'll run all the tests. And let me just move that over here so we can keep the ATTO benchmark results there to compare it with. On the sequential reads and writes, Crystal Disk Mark should reach the same 427, 435 numbers on the reads and writes. That would compare it equally to the ATTO. It's pretty much half of where we expect it to be, and this can be the difference between USB 3.0 and 3.1, which they've relabeled as 3.2, Gen 1 and Gen 2. It's really stupid. The good news is, at the Consumer Electronics Show, which is going on as I'm recording or broadcasting this live, the USB IF, the foundation, has come out with a new labeling system for USB 4 that includes the performance of it next to the number, next to the USB number. So it'll say USB 4 5 gigabits a second, or USB 4 10 gigabits a second, or USB 4 20 gigabits a second. Well, hallelujah. Who would have thought that the numbers you have to keep translating it into should be part of the model, of the USB, because ultimately that's all we want to know. That's all the consumer wants to know is how fast is it? I don't care what you call it. The same with, Wi-Fi 6. How fast is it? You're just calling it Wi-Fi 6. They need to include a performance number there. So I expect, although I haven't heard anything officially, my suspicion is that that's going to follow on Wi-Fi, and that this should be the way standards are reported. Because end users aren't going to remember these engineering numbers. They want to know, at the end of the day, what they want to know is, how fast is this, or how slow is it? And telling me it's USB 4 and there's 4 different flavors of USB 4. Which one do I have? Or in the case of USB 3 and 3.0, I'm sorry, 3.0 and 3.1, and you go, well, what's the difference? And they go, well, never mind all that. Forget we ever said 3.0 and 3.1. We're just going to call it 3.2 Gen 1 and Gen 2. How about that? It's still not helpful. So I think they got it right with USB 4 that's coming out by labeling the number as part of the logo. So on the back of your computer where you might have those blue ports and they have an SS, super speed, what does that mean? What is super speed? Well, now it'll say super speed 10 gig per second or super speed 20 gig per second. Finally, you know which USB port is the fast one. And also, I would highly recommend that you don't plug a keyboard or something into those fast USB ports. It will not make you type any faster. And let's see, I need this mouse right here. Jeremy Kramer's contributed $7. He says, here's for Jimmy and Lyle, courtesy of your Aurora Mariano's worker fan. Nice. Thank you, Jeremy. All right, we'll take a look here at what these numbers are going to be. We're almost done with this test. If I look on the back of this motherboard, there's another USB port I could try to see if that's the faster. I could always look at the motherboard manual, figure out which USB port's which. It's kind of interesting to me that the Type-C is having those issues. Whether that's a driver issue or a cable issue or device issue, I don't know yet. It clearly doesn't seem to be a device issue because it's running as it should be running for this test. Okay, that looks like our final numbers right there with the Crystal Disk Mark, and I want you to keep those numbers in mind because I believe that's USB essentially 3.0. So I want to go into a 3.1. I'm not going to play that whole 3.2 game because that's just too confusing. So what I want to do is I'm going to disconnect the device. We'll go to down here in the system tray and eject it. And then that should turn the blue light off. Yeah. And this thing is hot. I mean, it's almost uncomfortable. It's so hot. However, it's designed to do this. And it's one of the reasons I don't recommend that you leave flash drives plugged into your computer at all times. They will heat up when they're being used. If they're just idle, they're probably okay. But you know, if you were really, really cold in the wintertime, you could plug this in and write a bunch of data to it and use it as a hand warmer for a little while. It will cool down relatively quickly once you've unplugged it or stopped writing to it. And that's the nature of all solid state drives. It's nothing to worry about. But something you just sort of have to accept that if you're going to write a bunch of data to a USB drive, it's going to get hot. The big external USB enclosure that I use I put a 2 terabyte Western Digital Blue in it. And then I backed up the streaming computer, which is about 2 terabytes of data. And when it was done, the drive was almost too hot to hold. So that's normal. That's just the way it is. And that's in a giant heat sink, and it couldn't dissipate the heat enough to make it more comfortable to hold. And it didn't affect, you know, reliability of the data. I wasn't really watching it as, you know, to see how its performance was getting affected as it was warming up. I'm sure it started to slow down, which reaches a certain temperature. Then it cools down, and then the speed goes back up, and then it heats up. And it's the exact same way your CPU works. It's there to throttle, protect itself through throttling. I'm not aware that this did any throttling at all. It's about half as hot as it was a moment ago. So like I said, they cool down relatively quickly. I'm going to try this other USB port over here, the one above my Type-C connector, because I think those are both 3.1s, and I want to see if that makes any difference. So we were just at, let's call it 450 megabytes a second. Let's do the test again. I'm only interested in doing the sequential test. And if we're still in the 450s, I want to get into the 900s, so I got to figure out what I got to do to make that happen. Remember, most computers, oh, look at those numbers, what a difference. So which USB port you plug it into is obviously clearly going to make a big difference. On the back of this computer, I've just plugged it into the USB slot, the normal Type A slot that's above the Type C connector. They're always put in pairs. So 1072 is pretty good, pretty darn good for an external drive through USB. Maybe one of the best I've ever seen, to be honest. And the writes are very respectable. Writes are often lower than the reads, but those writes are very, very respectable. And now if I wanted to make an Acronis true image backup of this entire machine here, which is just Windows, it's about 30 gigs, I bet you it'll do that in about 6 or 7 minutes. So it's much, much faster. And we can test that if we want to, but I want to reiterate the importance of knowing which of your USB ports supports which speeds if you're going to spend the money to get something that's fast, right? Like this, you know, it's not cheap, 140 bucks for 512 gigs. And if you're only going to plug it into an older computer that doesn't support what this can do, in my opinion, you've wasted your money unless you're planning on upgrading soon, or you're going to get an add-in card like Silverstone sells USB add-in cards that you can plug in to an older computer to make it capable of doing USB 3.0 or 3.1. That being said, let's run the ATTO benchmark again and see what numbers we get on it now. One of the best ways to know which USB port is which is to pull up your motherboard manual. If you don't have it handy, just go to your motherboard manufacturer's website, click on the motherboard that you have, go to the support section under manuals or documentation, and pull up the user manual and then there's usually a diagram and it'll show like all the ports. It'll show like the top of the motherboard and the side, and then there'll be little lines with numbers, and then you match the numbers up with the legend below it that says that's what this is and that's what that is. And then you can identify your ports that way, and if necessary, get a little label maker or get a marker and mark the fast one, right? Because you don't care about the other ones. You only want to know which one's my fast one. So you can even get a little Sharpie and just make a line next to it or something that you could easily identify, that's my fast port. So these numbers are already starting to look better. Oh, look at that. So as soon as we jumped into, well, we'll see when we hit that 512 kilobytes, we should see some bigger numbers. Yeah, we're already into the 900s at 256. And this will be interesting to see if the numbers are identical going from 512 down to the 8 meg. But the numbers are essentially better than advertised on the box. That's always a good thing. Yeah, we're at 8 megs now, and it's pretty consistently staying in the upper 800s on the writes and upwards of 1,000 megabytes a second on the reads. Remember, a capital B means bytes and a lowercase b means bits. So if you wanted to know the megabits per second, you will multiply these numbers by 8. So it'd be a much larger number. Megabits is typically how we measure speed with regards to your internet connection. And then we typically measure storage in bytes. And it's represented by a lowercase b for bits, which you can divide by 8 if you want to know how many megabytes per second. Or it's represented by an uppercase b, which is bytes, which you can divide by 8 if you want to know how many bits per second that is. There's a lot of confusion about that on the internet. So consistently, over 900 megabytes a second on the reads, file sizes of 128K and above. And those are very, very good performance numbers. My next test I want to run is to test the cells, to make sure all the cells are working correctly. And so for that, let's close this. And let's close this, and let's run the H2 Test W software, which again, I strongly emphasize you run this on all your flash drives, whether or not they're counterfeit or not, just to verify that all the cells are working. You know, even if it's a legit flash drive, just to verify it's in perfect working order. So the first thing I do is change it from German to English, and then we'll go to select the target drive, which is going to be the D drive here, and it's going to fill this drive up with data. So we're going to do a write and verify. Now it mentions that the NTFS file system uses a small part of the drive that it reserves. And so when it tells you that it can't test the entire capacity, it also says that that's normal if the drive is formatted in NTFS, which it is. And you'll see it's not much of a loss. It looks like we go from 488,271 that's being tested out of a total of 488,382, which is like 111 bytes difference. Who cares? I'm not worried about that. That's normal. And now it's going to start the test. Now, it says the test is going to take about 15 minutes. Obviously, the speed of the port and the speed of the device is going to determine along with the capacity of the device, how long this test is going to take. And why high speed is so important for me is if I'm doing this live video and I have this plugged into the other USB port where the drive ran at half the speed, then this would turn from a 15-minute test, or whatever it is now, 16-minute test, double that, because we were going at half the speed. It'll take twice the amount of time. Now suddenly we're into this for a half an hour. And if you're doing this day in and day out, you're moving data constantly, it really affects your productivity. So some people just like to have the fastest because they can afford it and that's what they like. Other people can increase their profit margin, can get more done, and it's an investment to make yourself more productive and have more billable work. So we'll go ahead and let this run. I expect it's probably going to run through it just fine. And while we're waiting, if anybody has any questions for me in the chat, I'd certainly be happy to address your questions now while we're waiting. Mark Drope Sr. has contributed $5. Hey, thank you, Mark. David Ice contributed $2. He says, hello, Carey and fellow chatters from West Virginia. Hey, David. Tony Wallow joins us, contributes $1.99. Gary Tatum has contributed $20. He says, your content is so worth the money. Oh, thank you, Gary. It's really nice. It's really nice when people appreciate the value of what you do, that they see a value in what you do. Flattery will get you everywhere. Viking wants to know if the best option is still an NVMe and a Silverstone NVMe enclosure. So the NVMe enclosure I liked is by a company called Pluggable. I liked it better than Silverstone's. However, the pluggable device is not as small and compact as this. So there's pros and cons no matter which way you look at it. If I were to put together an NVMe 512 gig external drive to match this one, I would have to spend $40 on the enclosure and then the cost of the 512 gig NVMe drive, which is going to put you right around the price of this that we're testing here today. But this is about 25% smaller, and it doesn't open up and come apart. Now, opening it up and coming apart is great when you want to change things out and you're a technical person. But if you're not a technical person and you give this drive to an end user, like the pluggable unit, and it starts to come apart on them, they think it's broken. They don't realize they may have hit the release lever to open it up. So this is all factory sealed like a flash drive. That means you can stick it in your pocket, you can throw it across the room. In this aluminum enclosure, you could probably drive over it with a car and it would probably be okay. The pluggable unit, not so much. So I would say this is far more robust because it's all factory sealed. And as a result, then it's not serviceable, right? You're just within your warranty period, and outside of warranty, if it's broken, you throw it away and buy another one. Which may not be a horrible thing given that the technology is moving so quickly. Within a couple of years, this will be considered slow and small. So you might want to replace it. Whereas with the pluggable unit, you could always open it up and change it out that way, unless there's another USB, like USB 4, in which case even that pluggable device you wouldn't want to use anymore because it would be too slow no matter what drive you put in it, right? If USB 4 is out and the pluggable is only using USB 3 or 3.1, then that's all it will ever be. And that may seem fast today, but it's not future-proofing you. So I don't know that there's any way to future-proof for this kind of external storage. But I will say I would not suggest one is better. I wouldn't say the pluggable unit is more desirable than this ORICO. It depends what you're going to use it for. For me, the fact that this is so thin and so short, this ORICO, makes it far more appealing to me because I'm moving it around all the time. The pluggable unit is much thicker and longer, and as a result, it's less convenient to stick in a pocket. You certainly can, but you're definitely going to know it's in there. This seems like I could lose it in a pocket, forget it's in there, and that's very appealing to me personally. But it depends on how I'm going to use the drive. If I'm just using it for my own personal use, that really doesn't matter. It's when I'm using it to work on client machines. It's when I'm using it to move data back and forth, and everybody's waiting, right? They're waiting for me to get the data there, and then I take it to the client, or I have files for my sister to edit. We're like, all right, well, we'll copy those and let's go into the kitchen and talk for half an hour and it should be done. This, we can sit there and probably just watch it finish in 10 minutes or whatever it's going to take if the computer we're plugging it into has USB 3.1. So the best option is really the best option for the individual use case, but the prices work out to be about the same. Mud wants to know if you've got 3 M.2 sockets, does it matter which one you use on your motherboard? You should refer to your motherboard manual and it will tell you the performance numbers of those M.2 slots. Some of them may run at ×2 speeds. You want one that runs at ×4. If you have a high-end motherboard, like an X399 board or an X299 board, they may all run at X4. Some of those M.2 slots may shut down a couple of your SATA ports, and that's all identified in your owner's manual, which, as I mentioned, if you don't have it handy, just go to the motherboard manufacturer's website, select the motherboard that you have under the support section, look at manuals, and then right in the beginning of the manual as it's identifying how your CPU goes in and which RAM sockets you could use, right within a few pages of that, you will see little pictures of the M.2s, what they're labeled and what speeds they run at which consequences, if there's any SATA ports that will be disabled in the process. And then after you read that and you've digested that information, make the decision that's right for you. There's no way I can tell anybody which slot they could use on their motherboard without knowing what their motherboard is, without knowing what their SSD is, and without knowing what their expectations are. Is this something you're going to want to get in and change later? You might want to put it in a spot that's easier to access. Is this something you intend to put in now and never ever change for the foreseeable future? Then you want to put it in the fastest slot, which may be ultimately wind up being behind your graphics card, which will make it very difficult to get into to upgrade it later. So that's why all these slots exist. That's why they run at different speeds and different accessibilities. That's part of the reason. And so you need to pick what's right for you. And since I don't know you, I have no idea. Furthermore, I don't know what boards you've got, so I can't even tell you which one's the fast one. But it's very easy to identify, super, super easy. In fact, the amount of time I spent talking about it, you could have already done it. Does it matter which SATA port you use for your hard drive on your motherboard? Well, any of the ports will work. However, if you have more than one drive, it is advisable that you plug your bootable drive into port 0. And the reason for that is if your BIOS ever gets reset or you upgrade it, it may default to wanting to boot off SATA 0 if you have a non-bootable drive in there, and then you end up, like, after I updated my BIOS or reset my BIOS, I can't boot anymore. That problem will never ever happen if you plug your bootable drive into SATA port 0. But if you don't mind going into your BIOS potentially and having to change your boot drive to the SATA port you've plugged it into, and you can remember which one it is, it'll work. It's just an added step that sooner or later you're going to run into. So if you just start off by plugging the boot drive in SATA 0, you'll never have that problem. Furthermore, what advantage is there to not plugging it into SATA 0? Like, are you asking me, it may take me all of about 45 seconds to open the user manual and figure out which of those ports is port 0, or I'll just shove it in there in whatever one it fits in. Is that okay? Anytime you have that attitude of, can I just shove it in there and it'll be fine, my answer is always going to be no. It's a very lazy, you probably shouldn't be building your own computer. You maybe should let somebody else do it for you. Because, part of building a computer is the enjoyment. the satisfaction of a job done right because you did it yourself. If you're not going to be bothered to do it right, you know, the SATA ports have numbers for a reason. And you just make your life so much easier, you know, to plug it in SATA port 0. I just can't imagine why you wouldn't. I can't imagine what's going on in your mind to go, well, if it doesn't matter, I'll just plug it in willy-nilly wherever I want. If you're building computers, you should always build them the same. So even if it made no difference, you should always plug the first drive into port 0 so that you're consistent across the board. And that makes supporting the computers in the future easier because you're not opening it up and go, which SATA port did I plug this one into, you know? How did I do this one different from that one? Always do it the same. That's my advice. Makes your life so much easier. Is Windows Defender along with the paid Malwarebytes still the best recommendation? For me it is. That's what I use and that's what I recommend. Whether or not it's the best, well, that depends who you ask. But it's what I recommend. Not the free Malwarebytes. You got to get the paid version of Malwarebytes. Carey, the flash drive is slowing down. Yeah, it's probably getting hot. Oh, holy smokes. I want to get my temperature gauge. That actually hurt. Wow. I got a little infrared temperature reader here. I haven't taken it out of its onto a video in quite some time. All right, let's see what this says. Whew. It's reading 134.7 degrees Fahrenheit. Try and figure out if I can get that to focus. There it is. That is hot. In Celsius, let's see if I can report that in Celsius. Celsius, that is 57.4 Celsius. Wow. Wow. So I'm sure that drive is throttling. It's not going to kill the drive. It's designed to get hot and to cool down. And this is an excessive test. This is not likely to be replicated in a real world case scenario. You know, even if you were copying 500 gigs of data to this drive all at once, you're probably not going to do it very often. And so it's going to heat up like it's doing now, and then as soon as the writes are finished, it'll immediately start to cool down rather quickly. But that's uncomfortably hot. Like that actually hurts. It hurts to hold on to that. But maybe that's what the little plastic loop is for at the end, because that's nice and cold. It's just the metal part here. That's the heat shield, and it's doing what it's designed to do. But that is seriously a lot of heat. And in all likelihood, it won't ever get any hotter than that. Once it starts to throttle, it reaches its peak. So it's not like it's ever going to catch fire. So it's already cooled down a little bit, probably from my hands being on it. It's at 130 degrees Fahrenheit right now, which is very, very hot. There's no doubt about it. Now, that's not unique to this device. Any NVMe enclosure that we plug into USB, especially if we're going to run it at 1,000 megabytes a second, you know, USB 3.1, that enclosure is going to get hotter the more data we write to it. So if you have a 2 terabyte capacity, then it can stay hotter for longer, is what I mean to say. The likelihood of people using this on a regular basis to move 500 gigs of data. It seems unlikely in a real world use case scenario. But it is running as it was designed to run. And I want to emphasize, they know they get hot. The reason this is metal, I suspect, is not just for product quality, but it acts as a way to dissipate the heat. I feel heat radiating a good 1.5 inches away from the device. I can feel the heat coming off of it. So that is absolutely going to slow us down, for sure. We're not going to be able to run at those peak speeds for that length of time from any NVMe device plugged into USB. And it's something to keep in mind and to expect, you know, if you're thinking about buying one. So it's still saying, so it's really slowed down because now it's saying it needs another 15. It seems like it's been saying it needs 15 minutes the whole time. It's interesting. And I'm going to let it run. Like I said, I want to verify that none of the data is going to be corrupted in the process. So far, it's written 147 megabytes out of 512. So we're just going to let it, you know, it's only a quarter of the way there, so we'll let it go ahead and do whatever it needs to do. And then we're going to read the data back. It does a write and a verify. You'll notice the right side of that window says verifying. And that will ensure that the heat did not corrupt the data. Right? So as long as all the data reads back at 100%, the device is working as it's supposed to work. And if that's the case, it certainly would be a device I would recommend if it was something that you would benefit from having with regards to, again, size, capacity, price, and performance. Will the Corsair Hydro Series H100i be efficient enough to keep the i9-9900 down in temp? There's really no problem with temps on an i9-9900. If you're getting the 9900K and overclocking it, that's a different scenario altogether. I would suggest you save your money and just get a Mugen 5 air cooler. You never have to worry about a dead pump or a leaking pump or the fluid drying up and becoming gooey. But to answer your question, yes, the H100i is way overkill to keep a 9900 down in temperature. Yeah, it's overkill. So yes, it will do it. Rudiger Luthi has contributed $10. What was the website of the free computer assistance? That's techguy.org. I can bring it up here on this computer. Well, the test is running. It gives us something else to do. Oh, I can't because I'm not plugged into the network. Never mind. Don't be afraid to just click on the previous video, and the links are always in my video notes. Like I think even on this video notes, if I'm not mistaken, it's very common people I don't know reach out to me as though they've paid me to be their personal technical support assistant and start demanding I help them fix their problem. They may not intend to come off that way, but that's how I see it. So because of how often that happens, I always include that link and go, look, if you're looking for free support, you know, go to techguy.org. And I detailed that in my previous video, and it'll also be a quick tips coming out here within the next week or so. So I want that information to be out there, and thank you for supporting the channel as always. Also, if the cloning software you're using is Acronis, you can always reach out to Acronis directly if you're having any issues cloning, if you've paid for it. If you haven't paid for it, and again, I want to emphasize, when you're not paying for something, you're pretty much on your own to figure out the problems. One of the things you get when you pay for something, or you're supposed to get, is the support. It's that you have somebody who is an expert in that product that you can call or email that will help you with any issues you have. So when you use a free product, you don't get that. So I always emphasize the people who are best equipped to deal with free products are technical people. The people who are best equipped to build the cheapest computers are technical people. These are the things you're going to have problems with, right? The cheapest components, getting all those to work together is a nightmare. And so if you're a newbie builder, or you're not a real technical person, but you're looking to save a bunch of money and you want to scrape the bottom of the barrel to put a system together super cheap, the likelihood of you having problems is directly related to how much money you spend, in my experience. And furthermore, if you're going to use free tools, anytime those tools have an issue, whether it's because you don't know how to use them properly, or it's an issue with the tool itself, with some compatibility of the hardware that you have, you're on your own to find the solutions when it's free. When it's paid, Acronis support is fantastic. And you can reach Acronis, if it's Acronis cloning software, you can reach them even in their Reddit forum, where they have a public forum where they have like Begowden in there daily answering people's questions, and he knows the product very, very well. Sergio wants to know, what's the common bad advice you wish would go away? All of it. All of it. Anytime somebody offers advice to you and you're not paying them for that advice, or they're not offering you their personal contact information, like, here's what I think you should do, and if you have any problems, here's my name and phone number, or here's how you can call me or reach me through email or WhatsApp or whatever, Skype. Here's my test for you. If somebody is offering you their advice for free, ask them, can I have your name and number so I can call you if this doesn't work the way you say it's going to work? And if they say no, that's what they think of their own advice. Think about it. Think about what I just said. On the other hand, they might also be saying no because why would I continue to help you for free? In either case, is that someone you want to take advice from? The best thing you can do is do your own research. Don't just listen to what somebody tells you, and me included, especially me. I have clients that pay me and hold me accountable for the advice I give. And when I give that same advice out for free on the internet, people will tell me what an idiot I am. Well, these other people have kept me in business for 30 years. I must be doing something right. And the people who are saying I'm an idiot apparently have no business, don't use a real name most of the time. And I don't know, I think maybe you're looking for attention or something. I don't know. Like, they don't have a YouTube channel, they know so much, but they don't want to share it, but they want to jump in and poison my well, So I don't want to be somebody you're going to call for free if you have a question with the advice that I gave generically to my audience. But if you're my customer and you're paying me, I'll do everything I'll make it work, and I'll make it right no matter what. So any advice on any topic that's offered for free with somebody who's not willing to back it up should be advice that you take with a grain of salt, right? You realize that there's no accountability, no liability, and no responsibility. It's your money, it's your inconvenience, and if the advice doesn't make sense to you, or if the advice is not clear to you, you might want to look elsewhere, do your own research, increase your level of knowledge, or bite the bullet and pay somebody like me to take care of it for you. But it's got to be somebody who's reputable, who won't just take your money and go away. It's got to be somebody who's in there for the long run. They want to make sure that you're happy so that you'll refer them to other people if they have problems. And they want you to call them in the future if you have problems, right? I need to eat today, but I also need to eat next week and next year. So I don't want to burn any bridges. I don't want to just grab a bunch of money and then disappear, because eventually the money will be spent and I'll be left with nothing. It's in my own best interest to see everything through, but not if I'm not making any money. If I'm not making any money, then spending my time helping people fix their problems is a ripoff to all the people who paid me. It's not fair. And it's not possible for me to sustain a business where everything is free. It's just not possible. So Bear all of that in mind. When it comes to advice, most of it is pretty much the person who's offering you their advice is telling you their preferences, and they know nothing about you. And that's why all of it is pretty much should be gone. If somebody's not going to be held accountable, then they shouldn't be offering their advice. Or let me rephrase it. They can offer it, but you shouldn't accept it at 100%. You should be like, all right, I'll keep that under consideration. I'll take it under advisement, but I wouldn't take it as 100% useful to you as an individual. Marty OL joins us. Hey, Marty, he's contributed $2. Thank you very much. Greg says that ORICO drive that we're testing is $225 in Canada. Somebody in the chat says the video looks blurry. That's if your resolution is set too low. That's not me. The video is going out at 100% focus, perfectly crystal clear. But if you've set your resolution too low on YouTube, or it's happened without you being aware that it happened, you'll need to click the little gear icon in the lower right corner of the video that you're watching and see what resolution it's set to. The smaller the number, the lower the res, the more blurry it's going to look. Mats Carlson's contributed 50 Norwegian krona. Thank you, Mats. Thanks for supporting the channel. Make sure he's a moderator there. What is the best way to know if your local tech knows what he or she is doing? Well, you want to look for referrals. You look at Yelp reviews, Google reviews, and referrals. If you're just trying to find somebody randomly to work on your computer or to fix your plumbing or whatever you need done, good luck. If they advertise on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, they're probably not good technicians. Probably. They're probably people who are hobbyists or enthusiasts looking to start a business. They're just getting started. They don't have much experience, and therefore they're not worth much. That doesn't mean they're all bad, but I would avoid that source. Then when you look at places like corporate places, whether it's Office Max, Staples, or Best Buy's Geek Squad, they tend to hire the employees that will work for the least amount of salary so that they have a higher profit margin. What the employee does doesn't matter. Like, you know, everybody's trainable. If it takes them 2 hours to do a job that should take a half an hour, who cares? So I avoid those places. What I look for when I'm looking to hire any service, my preference is to hire somebody where the business is still small enough that you can talk to the owner or that the owner is doing the work. Those are the people I want to support because that's the kind of business I am. And if I see others like me, I tend to find that the prices are more reasonable and the quality of the work is better. Not always. Not always. There are people that will convince you that you should pay them a lot more because of their experience and the quality of your product is far better than their competitors, but how would you know that to be true? And furthermore, what's their customer service like? So I've had a little taste of that recently with somebody where I overpaid for something and they didn't do the job right. And look, with all their experience, they should have got it done right the first time, and they have not come back out over the last 6 months to fix the problem, and I will probably end up fixing it myself. I could have spent maybe half as much and had somebody else do it. The question is, what about the quality of the product? I don't know enough to know the quality of one product versus another. I know what I had was junk. What it was replaced with is good. I have no issues with the quality of what I paid for. But what I don't know is, could I have gotten the same or similar quality at half the price and not had the issues from a so-called expert who's supposed to be, in the business for 30 years, as he claims to be. So I'm a little upset about it. And I'm upset at myself because I didn't do enough research when I picked this person, and I assumed he'd be worth the price if he's charging more. Sometimes you can charge too little. If somebody's charging too little, you might think, I don't know. And if somebody's charging too much, well, they just might price themselves right out of the job. So in any event, when I did go back and look at some of the reviews on Yelp, many people complained this guy was too much money. But nobody really had any issue with regards to customer service. And I really don't want to chase the guy down. For what I paid, he should be chasing me down. He should be asking me, hey, are you still happy with the work I did? Is there anything I can, he should be following up, and he's not. So basically, you want to look for referrals, and you want to look at reviews. If you don't have any referrals or reviews, that's probably a reason for that. And then you're going to be a gambler. And if you're willing to take that gamble, guy could be good, guy could be horrible, who knows? Roll the dice and find out. But you should set your expectations accordingly. Was that my floors? No, I'm very happy with the floors. No, this was the sunscreens I had put up. The guy put screws that are so long into the sunscreens that the windows won't open anymore. And it's no big deal for me to go buy some new screws that are shallower and won't go in so deep. But he drilled into my window frames, which ultimately doesn't really matter, but he ruined perfectly good window frames by drilling into them. He should know better. He should know what size screws to use. He'd been doing this supposedly for 30 years. The guy should know. And furthermore, when I complained about it, he said he'd come back later to address it, and never did. And I texted him. He doesn't return my text. So I'm imagining he's probably going to tell me he's got a different phone number or something. I can already hear the excuses. So I think I'll just go to the hardware store, buy some screws, and when the weather gets nice, I want to be able to open my windows. And my windows won't open now because there's screws driving through them, holding them shut. So I'm a little ticked off because I paid a lot of money, paid more than I should have. And I knew I was paying at the high end, but I was also convinced, having met the guy and spent about an hour talking to him in person, that he was very confident, that he had a lot of experience, and he was very down to earth. And once he got his check, after the work was done, he was supposed to come back, and I should have not given him the check. I should have waited until the work was done to my satisfaction. And in all fairness, at the time the work was done to my satisfaction, I didn't realize the windows didn't open until he left. It's something I should have checked while he was here. I also have a sliding screen door that locks, and I checked that and it wasn't locking. And I had to bring that to his attention, and he fixed it. But why do I have to bring it to his attention? This is what you do for a living. If you're putting a sliding screen door on, check to see that it locks. It's part of what you're supposed to do. If you're putting screens on my windows and drilling screws through them, make sure the windows open and close. It's a pretty basic thing to do, and I am profoundly disappointed that he did not do that, and further disappointed that he's not following up. So there's a part of me that just says, I don't want to deal with this guy anymore. I'm going to cut my losses and take care of it myself. There's another part of me that says, damn it, I paid this money and I expect this service, and I'm going to hound him until he comes out and does it right. It'll take 2 minutes of his time or 5 minutes of his time to change the screws out. But likewise, I can do it myself in the same amount of time. I just have to go to the hardware store and buy the right screws. But I shouldn't have to. For the amount of money I paid, I shouldn't have to. So anyway, that's what reviews are for. That's what Google reviews and Yelp reviews are for, to warn other people to, or share your experience, warning or otherwise, letting people know, hey, this is a bargain of the century, this guy's good, this person's good. And it's a shame most people don't go and read the reviews until they've been burned. Then they go, because I see a lot of negative reviews, they go, man, I wish I would have read the reviews before I hired this person. And they're just piling on to all the negative reviews that were there. Past Me has contributed €5. He says, because today is Tuesday. Well, thank you, Past Me. Bruno Antonelli has contributed $5. He says, Happy New Year, Carey. Hey, thank you, Bruno. Happy New Year to you. Carey, what is your opinion of RoboForm? I recommend it. I highly recommend RoboForm. Great Day says, I like a tech who does the work and will send a check in the mail after to make sure it works good. Nobody should ever work that way. If you do work, if you've completed a job, you deserve to get paid. If somebody says, I'll pay you after I determine your work is good enough, you're going to go out of business because there's too many people that will use you and they'll never pay you. So that's what collateral is for. In other words, I would need something of yours you need back for that to work. So the way you protect yourself is you pay with a credit card that will offer you protection. And ideally, when the work is completed, if you've hired somebody to do any work and they complete that work, you pay them. That is your contractual obligation under that arrangement. You don't get to change the contract and say, no, you know what, you're going to come over here, you're going to work for me, and then I'll decide later if I'm going to pay you and put a check in the mail. That's messed up. I would hope somebody does that to you, and we'll see how long you'll think that's okay to do it to somebody else. That's incredibly offensive. Brandon Looney's contributed £2. Hey, thank you, Brandon. Carey, have you seen anything interesting at CES 2020 and the YouTube videos? No, it's just a lot of junk. It seems desperate and pointless at this point. AMD announced their 128-core Threadripper, which is going to sell for $4,000, which has got to be a new record in ridiculously. People have software that barely uses 4 cores at the most, and we have CPUs that have double, triple that a number of cores, and we're not using them. So now to say it's 64 cores with hyper-threading with 128 cores or 128 threads, to suggest that's beneficial to 98% of the population, 99% of the population, it's just stupid. It's just flat out stupid. Because until software takes advantage of it, it's just might as well not be there. So to spend $4,000 on a chip that ultimately won't result in any performance increase more than a $600 chip makes no sense to me. Even when they tested it with was it Cinemark or one of those, they don't know how many cores Cinemark will utilize. And it's a very, and I can't remember the name of the benchmark, but they don't know how many cores it tests. And that's one piece of software that will utilize more than 4 cores. And there's a couple other pieces of software out there, but there's not many. There's not many pieces of software that utilize more than 4. And the ones that do are typically very, very vertical. In other words, they're very specific to an industry or an application that would be somebody who's probably got a college degree in whatever field they're in that would need that. It's not typically something a hobbyist would use. And what I see from the news coming out of CES this year is just a lot of nonsense garbage, little robot cats. It's a ridiculous number of cores in a CPU. It's sort of like, well, we can't get the car to go faster than 60 miles an hour. So instead of fixing that problem, we're just going to sell you 2 cars, which combined can do a total of 120 miles an hour. The problem is you can't drive 2 cars at the same time. And that's what they're doing with these cores. Just throw more cores. Since we can't seem to break 5 gigahertz reliably, just keep throwing more cores at them and keep knocking the price up, convincing the general public that there's value in that. Well, there might be value in that at some point, but there isn't today, not for the vast majority of computer owners out there in the way that we use them. I wouldn't see a benefit from it in video editing whatsoever. It's great to brag, right? I guess it's great to say, look what I have that you don't have because I have deeper pockets than you do. I guess that's great if you want to do that to each other. But for me, being practical, there's just nothing practical about it. There's no good reason for that to exist. It's solving a problem that doesn't exist. When software starts being coded to take advantage of multiple cores, I will sing a different tune. But by the time that happens, that chip will probably be 1/3 the price. So why would you pay all this money for something you can't use today? So that by the time you need it, it would actually cost you less. It doesn't make any sense in so many levels. I am so glad I did not go to CES. I'm so glad. I am so disappointed with the products that are being shown. They just seem pointless, novelty-like. Oh, we're making an OLED TV screen 48 inches instead of 60. We're going to go smaller. Oh, you're really thinking out of the box there. Who cares? Tell us what you really think. So glad I am not there. So glad. Yeah, Cinebench, that's what it was. Thank you. Wow, this test is going to take a long time. And that sucker is hot, hot, hot. See where we're at on that now. 137 degrees Fahrenheit. 137 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 58 degrees Celsius. It's hot. And you can see, as a result, this test is taking a lot longer. That heat is really affecting the performance of the drive. So if the whole point of this, if the whole point of you wanting to buy this drive is that you want to move a couple hundred gigs very, very quickly all at once, you might just be better off saving your money and buying something less expensive that will, when it's all said and done, compares in performance to that task. If you want to copy, say, 100 gigs of stuff, it'll do it really quickly. It's just after a certain amount of time, it starts to heat up, it starts to throttle, and that may be the case of all external NVMe USB drives. They're all going to do this to some variant, depending on the heat spreader that's being used. Let me take a look here and see what the data speed is. It's only written 114 megabytes. Oh, it's 114 megabytes a second. But you can see it's writing. It's written so far 307 megabytes. 307,000 megabytes. So it's still working. but it's going to take a while. Apparently, I'm trying to figure out if 45 minutes is the time remaining or the time that's passed. That's got to be the time that's passed. And then in parentheses after it has got to be the time remaining, the estimated time remaining. So I'm going to let it continue to run because I'm just curious how long that's going to take. And we'll see what those numbers are. So in the meantime, I'll just continue to answer whatever questions you've got here in the chat. Carey, would that drive be hot enough to hurt someone if touched? No, no. It's uncomfortable to hold on to it. Like I can grab it, and after about 4 seconds, it's too hot. I have to let it go. But it's not instant. It's not like it's a boiling pot of water or something. It's not that hot. But it's hot enough to be uncomfortable if you hold it. Sort of like, remember the game Hot Potato? Remember that game? You could hold it and then hurry up and toss it to somebody else before it burns your hands. It's basically a hot potato at this point. Marty Yoel's contributed $20. He says, hello. Hey, Marty. Thank you, Marty. Jose Acostas contributed $5. He says, I sent a PayPal, thought it would show here, but I'll send another donation. Truly enjoy watching how you go through details step by step in real time. Thank you, Jose. Yeah, when you contribute in PayPal, it sends an email to me, and I obviously cannot check my email while I'm live on camera. That's something I do after I'm done, and sometimes it even takes a couple days for me to get caught up because I have so much other work I've got to do. But I will always hit reply to those emails from PayPal and say thank you for contributing to the channel. When you contribute here in the super chat, in the chat room, YouTube takes 30% of whatever you give, and they make me wait up to 60 days before they pass that money on to me. And I can't refund it. There's nothing I can do. It's all in YouTube's hands. With PayPal, PayPal takes 3% versus YouTube's 30%. PayPal gives me the money immediately versus YouTube holding on to it. And PayPal offers me the ability to refund it if need be, and to even have a record or a receipt versus YouTube gives me no record or receipt of that you've given me any money. So it makes it hard to track through YouTube. But at the same time, I can't see those contributions from PayPal while I'm live. So just bear that in mind. Know where your money's going. And thank you for supporting the channel. Is there an off-lease PC seller you recommend? Yes, I recommend Second Chance IT. They're a seller on Amazon. So if you look up like a Dell Optiplex 8020, and it'll say see your buying options, on the Amazon site, and look down and you should see one of those sellers is called Second Chance IT. I think it's the number 2 ND, Second Chance IT. And they've been very, very good. They've helped with the veterans giveaways we've done in the past. I'm sure they'll help again when we do more veterans giveaways in the future. And everybody who's purchased from them has been very happy. The people I'm hearing back from, whether they bought one for themselves or they've received one from me as a veteran, they're very, very happy with it. Not only with the computer, but with the service and the price. Jaxta says, so Google just took $6 from that $20. Yeah, that sounds about right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they take 30%. You could always give honorable mentions to PayPal donations in your next videos. I could, but I won't. And the reason for that is not everybody wants to be announced, number one. Number two, if what you're trying to do is suggest ways in which I can be busier, it's not a good path for me to go down. I've got so much on my plate. I already mentioned it can take days just for me to respond to those emails. So to say, well, now before I go live, there's one more thing. I've got to prepare a list of names and what they contributed and when, before I can set the kitchen back up and get all the lighting, and get all the parts out and get the parts list and the video notes and the thumbnails done and the title done. There won't be any time left to make a video. We're just slowly eroding away how much time I have. So, if people are expecting more than that, then they'll need to talk to me personally about it. But basically, people who contribute through PayPal get a personal response. People who contribute in live chat will get a live response. That's it. That's it, man. I mean, that's all I can do as one person that has to do everything. And I see plenty of YouTube channels that don't give shouts out or acknowledgement to contributors. And yet people still contribute. So I don't get that at all. I think you deserve some recognition, but not necessarily always the same way. Like, I'm not going to collect email addresses from people who contribute in Super Chat so I can respond to them the same way I do at PayPal. And I'm not going to collect their screen names on PayPal, which is different from their PayPal name in many cases, and then associate it, and then wonder if they're even online the next time I broadcast live to even hear the acknowledgement. So well, I could do it. It doesn't make sense to do that. All right, let's see. Joe Narciso's contributed $5 Canadian. Hey, thank you, Joe. Mats Olaf Rickardson says, tomorrow I'm going to deliver my latest computer build, which is an i5 9600K on an Asus motherboard. And he's very pleased with the build and that it's super fast for home use. Does an NVMe SSD matter when gaming? It depends on the game. And it depends on the player, honestly. And if you're gaming online, your latency is mostly going to be with your internet connection anyway. So it just depends on the game. $995 people are watching live around the world. Why don't you give me a little shout out there in the chat room. Let me know where you're watching me from. And will you guys do that? I got to refill my Coke is pathetically low. Got to do something. I got to fix this problem. I think should I open that big can of Coke I've got? I got this giant can of. That is the sound of an ice maker, my European friends. So I saw this at the store. This is a giant can of Coke. It's huge. And I said, I'll save that for a special occasion. Well, it is Tuesday. Oh, you're going to get that box, Lyle? Lyle's going after the box the flash drive came in. I keep calling it a flash drive. Get it, boy. Get it. Get it. Here, let's see. Get that box. Get it. It's right here, boy. It's right here. Oh, is that tasty? Is that tasty? Get it. Crazy dog. Forget the dog toys. He just wants the packaging. Oh, no. Hey, he just took it outside. Well, I guess I'll be... Oh, he's just staring at me and taunting me with it now from the backyard. I guess I'll be picking that up from the yard later. Oh, he's coming in for more now. You happy? If I could just get you to throw that into the trash can or the recycle bin, you could actually earn your keep around here. Mike Britton has contributed $10. He says, hello to all from God's waiting room. Good to see you again, Carey. So we jokingly say Southern Florida, where a lot of Americans go to retire until they die. It's God's waiting room. That's the joke that never gets old. You know, I got a crazy idea. Probably stupid. But now, I just want to know. Let's see if I can take a tall glass, fill it with ice. Now, I am not recommending you do this. This is a tall glass filled with ice. And I wonder if we can keep this drive a little cooler and make it go a little faster. And let's see if that affects our performance numbers at all. What are you eating? Oh, you can't eat that. Jimmy's trying to eat the package that the drive came in. You guys have all these toys. Play with your toys. Bill Bowers contributed $5. He says, giddy up, hello from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Hey, Bill. Ben Stroud's contributed $5. He says, I'm having a aortic valve replacement tomorrow. Everyone pray for me. Well, certainly our thoughts will be with you, Ben. Hopefully it's a standard operating procedure and everything will go well. Certainly keep you in our thoughts. Sergio Cochet says, an NVMe cocktail. Forget the little umbrella. I want a USB cord coming out of my drink. John Wilson's contributed $20. He says, hello, Uncle Carey and chat and fellow mods. Hey, John, thank you for the contribution as always, and welcome in. Carey, can I back up from my Acronis boot USB, or must I install the Acronis software? No, if you've made an Acronis boot USB, I use that constantly on my videos. You'll see me use the Acronis boot USB more than I use the installed Acronis software. So just watch my videos for any clone or backup demonstration, and you'll find that 9 times out of 10, I use the boot USB. So to answer your question, yeah, you can just use the boot USB. Might having the USB drive in here cause condensation inside of the flash drive or this solid state drive? Yes, of course it could. So that's why I'm doing it. I want to see what happens. We can talk about what might happen all day long. What good is knowing what might happen? To me, that's pointless, useless, waste of time and thinking. I want to know what will happen. And you know how I can find out? By doing it myself. Even if somebody tells me it won't work, I won't necessarily believe them. And if somebody tells me it will work, I won't necessarily believe them. Until I have done it myself, I really don't know the truth. That's the kind of guy I am. And I encourage others to be the same, because too many people continue to propagate invalid, incorrect, or just blatantly, patently false information under the intent that they believe it to be true. But whether or not you believe something and whether or not something is true are unrelated. Ben Stroud says, Carey, I've got a 1 terabyte storage on Acronis Cloud, so I've got 2 backups of my system. One is in the cloud, and one is on a 1 terabyte USB 3.1 M.2 SSD. Perfect. That's the best way you can back up. You have your local backup for performance, and then you have your cloud backup in case of a complete disaster, whether it's ransomware, fires, thefts, floods, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the cloud backup is slower, the local backup is faster, and more than likely you'll need the local backup before you'll need the cloud backup. But since you don't know which one you're going to need in which order, you really need to have them both. It's a good idea. How's my ice doing? Is it melting? Well, the drive's a lot cooler. Seems to be working well. That'd be funny if that whole thing melts. You know it's hot. It's definitely cooler than it was. I don't know if that's making a difference on the performance numbers. Are the Intel chips named KF the exact same speed as the K version? I think they are. I think the F just doesn't have a built-in graphics card, that's all. That should be the only difference as far as I know. If you're going to be a gamer, building a gaming machine, and you have no intent on using the built-in Intel graphics, then why pay for it? You can get the KF version of the chip cheaper, upwards of $30 cheaper in many cases. And use that $30 that you're saving to go towards a better GPU. Robert says, Carey, I'm thinking of buying a new laptop. What do you recommend? I don't really recommend anything without knowing the person. There's so many things to consider with a laptop: screen size, weight, battery life, Wi-Fi, solid state drive storage, RAM. I do recommend buying an Intel-based laptop. They generally have a better battery life and better reliability than AMD. I know AMD just released their 4000 series of chips, or they didn't release them, but they exposed them at the Consumer Electronics Show, and they're primarily being used, as far as I know, in portable things like laptops. If you're my client, what I advise you to look for in a laptop is the weight and the size of it and the battery life that you need, and focus on Intel based. Get a solid state drive, ideally, NVMe, rather than upgrading it yourself. Nothing worse than getting a brand new machine and having to take it apart. So best to just get it from the factory that way. Minimum of 8 gigs of RAM, ideally 16. Beyond that, get the size you want with the battery life you want, and you might consider buying an extended warranty if you're spending over $1,000. Normally, I don't recommend extended warranties in general, but on things that are very expensive to repair, like laptops, it'll be good peace of mind that your laptop will always be functional for the length of warranty you purchase. Some laptops will have a shorter warranty from the factory than others, and that's all reflected in the price and something to consider. That's about the most I can advise you on the laptops. Ultimately, what you end up deciding, whether you want to go with something from Dell or HP or Razer or Asus or Acer. I know Acer sounds like I just said it. I said Razer in Acer, just to be clear. And numerous other manufacturers in between. It's a very personal decision to meet your individual requirements as well as your budget. I personally have a Dell XPS 15. I'm very happy with it. Craig Lilly says dry ice would be even more fun. Oh, probably safer too, but I don't have any. Sean 10 says, I've watched your videos on how to clone using Rufus and Acronis, but Rufus has changed a lot since those days. Would it be feasible to do a new video on how to? So one of the things I'm noticing from Jean Tem is they seem to think I'm looking for something to do, and every suggestion they're giving me is how I can do more. So every time I make a video, it's like Murphy's Law. The Rufus software changes within like 2 weeks. So if I end up making an updated one, then it just means it'll be out of date in 2 weeks again. You don't have to use Rufus to make an Acronis CD. What I've did is I've updated that by saying, install the Acronis software on your computer, go to the Tools section and click that you want to make a rescue disk, and tell it you want to make it on USB. Then Acronis will direct you to plug your USB flash drive in, if it's not already there, and it will make a bootable USB, and you don't have to follow any of those other steps. You can just do right through Acronis. It's super, super easy. If you want to do it from an ISO image, then you should understand how to use Rufus. And Rufus works exactly the same as it always has. They just move things around. So you have to read what's on the screen and not be a robot. Well, he clicked on the third button on the right side. Well, it's not there anymore. So instead of thinking like that, you have to think, well, he clicked the option to create a bootable image from an ISO. Which one of these buttons on Rufus says it creates a bootable image from an ISO? Click on that button. And each button is labeled. If you hover the mouse over it, they're the same buttons that do the same job. They just change the way it looks and they move the location. The software is exactly the same. So for me to have to update a video that I've already done, and I've even replaced it with the Acronis, just doing it through the Tools section of the Acronis software, only to have it, turn around and be changed again, to me is a pointless exercise, especially in a free video series where neither Rufus nor Acronis is paying me, nor are the users who are requesting it. Now, if you want to pay to have a video made, now we're talking, and I would certainly be happy to follow your requests from somebody who's willing to pay for the cost of producing it. I really don't need any suggestions for videos to make. I have got so much work to do, so many reviews still have to be done, so many interviews still have to be done, and so many builds have to be done, plus the repairs that come in, and it's only me. I have to do everything all by myself. So what I would like instead of those suggestions, I mean, I'm glad you like my content, don't get me wrong, but I would rather create new content than revisit old content. Sergio Cochet says, apart from Rufus, there's a tool called Etcher, which is very popular and may be more user-friendly. Oh, I never even heard of that. I might have to look into it. Customer of mine recently updated their MSI Carbon Pro AM4 AMD system to the latest BIOS. And when they go into the BIOS, there used to be like this graphical user interface in the BIOS. And now after they did the latest BIOS update, it looks like an old school BIOS. It's all text. And she's like, what happened to my BIOS? It used to be pretty and it used to have all this information, and now it's like I went back 10 years. Well, MSI, in order to add compatibility for the AMD 3000 series chips, ran out of room on the BIOS chip. So in order to make room, they removed the graphical user interface. MSI's got one of the most bloaty BIOSes that is out there. And I think there's a couple of gigabyte boards that happen too as well. So the good news is, if she wanted to upgrade her previous edition AMD, I don't know what she's got, like a 2700X. If she wanted to upgrade that to a 3950 or a 3900X, with that BIOS, she can now do that if she wants to. Just swap the chip out. If she wants the pretty BIOS and never wants the motherboard to be upgradable to the latest series of chips, well, she could stick with that bloated BIOS. But it was a little bit of a puzzle. I didn't know the answer immediately. I had to research it. When I learned that, be aware that that may be a condition of a BIOS update, as it may change the overall look of the BIOS. And you got me thinking about that when you mentioned how Rufus looks different. But, I will load whatever version of Rufus is available. It doesn't matter to me. I can use all of them. I guess the way I use it and the way you're using it are different. You're looking, getting back on this, but it's like you're looking to click a button that's located in a certain location without realizing what that button is, what that button does. I, on the other hand, when I'm looking at software like Rufus, I'm reading what it says, and I'm clicking on the button that does the action I want it to do. Wherever that button is located, I have not ritualized it. I'm actually reading it and making the proper selection. And that's what I encourage you to do as well. It's less confusing that way. Archie the dog says he just bought a Cronus 2020 and an external NVMe drive to upgrade his current NVMe to 2 1 terabyte Samsung 970 EVOs. Nice. And Doman 2000 says Ultra ISO is a free utility that can write ISO images to a flash drive as well that are bootable. Yeah, that's been around a long time, Ultra ISO. Used to use that back in CD and DVD days. James Robson says, can we expect any repairs anytime soon? Well, send me something to repair. Everything you see here is real. So when people send me things to repair, I film them. I just recently got the power supply back from Corsair on that most recent repair I did where we diagnosed a bad power supply. And so that's got to go back in today at some point. I've got to put the power supply in. And that's the last of the repairs that I've got currently. I don't think I've got anything coming in. So if you've got something you want repaired, and you're willing to pay for the shipping to me and from me back to you, hit me up with an email. We can work something out. In the meantime, I want to remind everybody all the content you're watching is free. And if you want to pay for the content, I'm sure we could make arrangements to make whatever you'd like to see. Do I repair laptops? In general, no. It depends what we need to do to the laptop. If it's something like going from a hard drive to a solid state drive and bumping up the amount of RAM, yeah, that's easy. You can handle that. If you've got a laptop that won't turn on, it's probably going to need some parts. I can't get those parts. And furthermore, it's not the level of work that I do, and it'll take me a lot longer, and that means other people will have to wait. It's not my wheelhouse. And it would be very difficult for me to warranty any work that I do if the only place I can get parts is somewhere like eBay. It's very sketchy. So I don't want my reputation going down that road. And furthermore, when it's all said and done, cost-wise between shipping and parts, you could have put that money towards buying a new laptop, which will have a whole new warranty, be faster with a new battery, a brighter, sharper screen. It would be much better for you in that scenario to put that $300 towards a new laptop, because that could be halfway, laptops you can get for $600. You take an old laptop, put $300 into it, probably doesn't make any sense. Stuff like that makes more sense if you do it yourself, or you take it to an authorized repair facility where they can get official parts, OEM parts, and stand behind the work they do. Danny wants to know, is this drive a yes or a no so far? That's a good question, Danny. It's awfully slow. It's awfully, awfully slow. And it's expensive. At $140, it's very pricey. And what's the point of 512 gigs of high performance storage if you can't use it all at once? So it's a definite maybe for me on this. Under certain use case scenarios, it may be an ideal solution. But the performance is pathetic. I mean, we've been sitting here now waiting just to write. All we're trying to do is write 512 gigs of data to it. And it is taking an excessively long time. Now, when I started this test, I was under the impression it would be done in 15 minutes, and that sounded about right. But now that this test has been running and continues to run, and we're like not even 50% of the way there, well, it's going to verify. So we're only 50% of the way through the entire project. But let me see, where am I at on it? So it's written 474 gigs out of 512. So when that green line reaches the middle, that means the writing portion of the test is done, and then it goes to the verifying. Now the verifying should go very quickly, because all it's going to do is read the data off the drive, and the reading should happen faster than writing does. So it looks like we've been an hour and 20 minutes into this test, which is an incredibly long time to move 512 gigs of data. In fact, we've only moved 477 gigs of data. We've got a little bit more to go. And I don't know. I'd have to compare it against something else that is USB 512 gigs and see how long that takes. Like, I could pull one of these SanDisk Extreme Pro USBs that are 256 and see how long that takes to write 256 and see if it's half of what this drive is taking. But I seem to recall these 256 gig drives from SanDisk run much, much faster when I run the same test on them. So I'm kind of on the fence on it. I'm kind of on the fence. This drive is promising, and in small bursts of data, it's fantastic. But to fully utilize its full capacity, it won't run at full performance. And it gets, hot to the touch. At the same time, it's slowing down. Hugh Wong has contributed $2. He says, hey, Carey, sorry I'm late. Just got off work. Hey, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Carey, are you still donating computers for the veterans? If so, I have an iFi system with 8 gigs of RAM I would like to donate. Yes, I'm still doing that. It'll be a while because I've got so much work from paying customers I've got to do first. But if you want to send it, I will put it in the stack. I've got about 4 in the stack right now to give away. And then probably in a month or two, we'll start going through and giving more away again. Michael Brooks says, I enclosed an Intel 660p 1 terabyte into a USB enclosure, and I'm very happy with the results. And it costs less than what you are testing today. Yeah, well, I could see that. I'd be curious how it would perform this test and how long that would take. But the Intel 660p is a good value of a drive, but it's also, QLC, and I think this is. Well, what kind of NAND do they use here? Is it TLC? I thought it was TLC, but I can't remember now. I have to get my glasses out to read this. It just says 3D NAND flash. It doesn't tell me what kind. And this does support UASP and trim protocol. It works in Windows 7, 8, 10, Mac OS, Linux, and Android, so you can use it to back up your phone. That may be where it's best used, really, is to back up a phone. Yeah, I don't know what type of flash memory they're using here. But I know that Intel is the QLC, which doesn't have quite the endurance. Okay, so if we look at the screen now, it's saying that it's written all 512 gigs, or as much as it can, to the capacity of this drive that's sitting in a cup of ice. And now it's reading it all back. And it's verifying that none of the data is corrupted, that everything is exactly the way it should be. And this is critical. If it fails any of this verification, I cannot recommend the drive. Because imagine you have critical information on it, and you go to read some of that information back to find out it's corrupted. That would not be acceptable. So before I can choose to recommend or not recommend the drive, I need to make sure that the verification process is completed 100% without errors. So we've already written the data, and now we're reading all the data back. And again, this should happen much faster, this part of it. And we'll find out what the results are here in just a few minutes. Everything is live, as I mentioned, so this process does take a while. And if this is something you want to repeat and try on your own flash drives at home, you should have an idea or a concept of how much time you're going to be involved, depending on the speed, the capacity, and how much data you're moving across to the device, the size of the device. The capacity, I already said the capacity. Michael Cutler's contributed $20. He says this is to put towards the PCs for the Vets program. And thank you for doing it for veterans. Well, right on. Thank you, Michael. I'll make you a moderator here. And all the contributions to the channel, they go to the channel. I don't necessarily put certain money aside for certain projects. Sometimes I do, but for the most part, do know when you contribute to the channel, it goes where it's needed at that time. when we do the veteran stuff, it costs a lot of money to ship. So I'm sort of locked into that. And whether or not the contributions come in or not, I still have to pay for it. So do know that as the contributions come in, they're used where they're most needed. I've got some parts I ordered for a couple of builds I think you guys are going to be super excited to see. Normally, I wait for customers to order machines, and then I build whatever the customers order. I decided, because of the contributions enabled me to go ahead and order some parts of some extraordinary machines, and that I will offer those machines for sale to the audience if anybody wants to buy them. And if and when they sell, I can then take that money and use it to buy whatever exciting hardware is out, or use it to pay for all the shipping and all the veteran, we'll see how that just kind of rolls into what's needed. And thank you so much for supporting the channel. And we will get back to more veteran giveaways, as I mentioned, within a month or two. I just have to get caught up with all the backlog I've got right now. Customer ordered a machine from me the other day, and I was like, this will be a month. From the time we get the parts ordered to when they get here to when I have time to build it, and then when I ship it, it'll take a week to get from Phoenix to Michigan. It's going to be the first week of February, maybe even the second week of February before you receive the computer. Are you good with that time frame? And everybody's been very patient so far, and everybody's like, yeah, no problem. So that's how far backed up I am right now. Michael Brooks says, I was away from the computer. What testing program are you testing? Well, for the last hour and a half, Michael, we're testing with this free piece of software called H2 Test W, which I use to test the capacity and quality of any flash drives I buy. And so because this is ultimately flash media, it's just larger in capacity than most. I want to verify that it works correctly. And wow, it seems like the ice is stuck to the ice is molded around the flash drive. I can't get it out. Come on. Ugh, it's stuck. Well, that's all right. That is kind of funny, though. I'm making a mess over here. Yeah, I'd like to get you a camera angle right over here so you can see this. Eddie Tuigs contributed €20. He says, thank you for all you do. Hey, Eddie, thank you, and thanks for supporting the channel. Mike Ladd said the drive is TLC. This is from the Amazon page. Supported by the built-in 3D NAND flash TLC particles. Yeah, there you go. So this drive will have more endurance in theory than your Intel 660p, which means it can write more data to it before the cells start to fail, but it's going to take a lot of writing to get there regardless. I wonder if I can... Let's just see if I can switch over temporarily to camera 1 again. Go right here, fit to screen, and then let's see if we can get you zoomed in on that, because I think that's hilarious. Let's move this. So what I was trying to show you is it's coming out with the ice is just stuck to it. Oh, it's coming out now. And you can see the blue light. Oh, it's nice and cold. The blue light is flashing on the end. Well, that's keeping the drive nice and cool. You should get a free cup of ice with every flash drive. Jam it in there. Do you prefer shaken or stirred, Mr. Bond? Look at the mess. Well, I will say that the ice has won in the sense that the drive is no longer hot at all. I was kind of curious if the drive would heat up more than the ice could cool it down, but the ice is winning. The drive is running very cold right now. Okay, and now we'll go back to see what the status is. Only writing heats it? No, writing it will get hotter faster on the write cycles, but even if you do an intense read, it'll get hot as well. Carey, is that drive waterproof? No, it is not. Let's see if I can put this back. Oops, wrong view, Carey. There it is. Now I can see. NVMe on the rocks. Exactly, Mike Dane. Exactly. So what are we doing? It was an hour and 20 minutes, just to give you an idea. It was an hour and 21 minutes to do the writing of 512 gigs. To read the 512 gigs, it's only going to take about 20 minutes. So you can see how the write cycles are far more intense on a flash drive than the reading. In fact, when the cells fail on a flash drive, when they've been written to their maximum ability, the drive doesn't stop working. It just becomes read only, and it'll stay that way forever because you won't be able to change the cells anymore. But the cells don't die. It's, a lot of people have a misconception about understanding what happens, and it shows how few people in the world have ever experienced it, or they would know. So people, they tend to think, oh, I won't buy those solid state drives. They have a finite number of times they can be written to. Everything in the world is temporary. Your hard drive has a finite number of times it can be written to. It'll be when it fails, that'll be how many times you're able to write to it. And that may vary from one drive to the next, but it's an average of about 4 or 5 years those drives, mechanical drives, fail. Not all, but if you average it out, I see in my business drives that are between 4 and 6 years old, mechanical drives start to fail. Now, if we calculate how many write cycles they had, we could just as easily come up with that number there as well. But it's a different reason. But when those drives fail, they're gone, mostly. When these drives stop being able to write, as I mentioned, they become read-only. So the data is still there. But notice how much faster, like we're already reading back 408 gigabytes, so there's only 110 more gigabytes to go. And we're going to be done here in about 3 minutes. So the writing took 5 times longer than the reading in this case. I think that's pretty interesting, and it's pretty universal among flash memory. Even when you watch the benchmarks, you'll see the write numbers are typically lower than the read numbers, as it's changing the state, the electrical charge state of each cell for the ones and zeros that you're storing. $512 proof. That's funny. That's an expensive drink. It is, Gary. It is definitely an expensive drink. Sergio says this drive is not on ORICO's official website. Sure it is. I put a link to it in the video notes below the video. Just click on the ORICO website and you'll see the drive is listed there. Carey likes being brave. Yeah, I do. I do. Almost done. We're almost done with the test. Should have less than 40 seconds remaining on this. The good news is it's not finding any errors. So that's critical, absolutely critical. It's game over if any of the data comes back as unreadable. Okay, test finished without errors. It says you can now delete the test files or you can verify them again. The writing speed averaged at 100 megabytes a second and the reading speed averaged 463 megabytes a second. Well, it's a big difference. That's a big difference. So that just goes to show you how you can't really rely on benchmarks in real world case use scenarios. And that being said, it doesn't make this drive good or bad, but it's a little more truthful in marketing the drive to say, Under certain conditions, this drive is going to get really, really hot. It will not affect the quality of the data or the integrity of the data, and the amount of time it's going to take may average out to 100 megabytes per second in a real-world case scenario of being plugged into a USB 3.1 where you're supposed to get this high speed. Now that being said, that's still 5 times faster than a mechanical drive that's plugged into USB 3. Those average around 20 megabytes a second. They're really slow, those little laptop drives. But again, there are faster drives, mechanical drives available. I'm just talking about what I've recently experienced. I was going to point something out here. Oh, when this test is done, it leaves your drive filled. So if we look, we're going to have a bunch of test files. They're all 1 gig apiece until it fills up, the capacity of the drive. So the drive doesn't clean up after itself. We'd have to select everything and hit the delete button and delete them, and then that will free the drive up to be used for something else. But do know that this test, this H2 Test W software, doesn't clean up after itself. You have to do this, or you'll go to use the drive and there won't be any space on it. Now we can go over here and eject the drive, and we should get a notice it's safe to remove. And now I can unplug it. There it is. And now let me go back over to my main camera. Okay, so how does a drive perform? Like right now, just to give you an idea how cold this drive is, it's 53 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's nearly a third colder. It cooled down by over 60%, keeping it in the ice. And that is, just to give you an idea, in centigrade, 16 degrees centigrade. Overall, if you're asking me would I spend $140 for this, no, I would not be happy spending $140 for this and seeing it perform this way. No, I would not be. To compare it, I don't have another 512 gig drive, but I do have I just purchased a 256 gig. Actually, there's a couple of different things we could try here. This is the Silverstone enclosure with a 500 gig M2 SATA drive. So it's close to being comparable. It's not NVMe, it's just SATA. And we'll plug that into the exact same USB port we just used. I don't know if I have anything on here. I gotta check and see. I think it's empty, but let me just verify that. Yeah, that's empty. So we can go and run the same test. We'll run a series of tests. Let's do the benchmark. Oops. Just going to delete that. Let's do this. I have to go full screen so I can see, guys. Give me a minute. Okay, so we want ATTO. So if you get hung up on the benchmarks, you're probably going to think this drive is much slower than the other drive. But then when we go and copy 512 gigs of data to it, or 500 gigs of data to it, you might find it significantly faster. And I don't think it'll get as hot, but I'm not sure. So let's try that now, just so we have something as a reference point to compare it with. So remember, an NVMe drive has the capacity, in theory, to run up to 3,600 megabytes a second, but the USB port is going to limit us. And if the USB port's going to limit us, does it make sense to spend extra money for NVMe when a SATA drive may perform equally as well? Now, a SATA drive will perform up to 550 megabytes a second, But then you could say, well, the NVMe drive's doing 940, but it really wasn't. Even on our readback test, it was doing 480 of all 512 gig, and that's less than the SATA at 550. The question is, will the SATA get as hot and therefore reduce its speed by half, the way that the NVMe did? Or because the SATA doesn't write as fast, does it not get that hot to begin with? And when it does warm up, it's not as extreme of a performance difference when that happens, which could mean the SATA drive is not only cheaper but faster in that type of a use case scenario. We're going to find out the answers to that and more when we come right back right after. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not doing that. But we're going to find out. We're going to find out. Let's put camera 1 back on, and then I will put myself in the corner again. There we go. Niles Vandesands contributed €2. Do you own a MITS Altair 8800? No, I never had an Altair home computer. No. A nice little collector's item these days. Not quite sure what you could do with it, other than stare at it like a piece of art. Greg Lilly says maybe Carey should have a seal of disapproval, Carey holding the item over a trash can. Well, that's a bit rough on them. So look, if you insult the manufacturer, there's chances they won't ever send you another product to review again. I want to keep the reviews honest without being harmful. I will mention this device is made in China. We typically find better device quality coming out of Taiwan or Japan. And so when I see that made in China, it's one thing if it's a case, it's just metal. When it comes to the quality of the components and the performance of the components, the reliability of the components, I don't think it's any secret that there's a lot of stuff made in China that's just junk. That being said, iPhones are made in China, right? So it doesn't cover everything that's made, but it's hard to tell good from the bad. Obviously, bad stuff can come out of Taiwan and Japan too, but what I'm seeing is that's pretty unusual versus with China, it's pretty common. And it's tough to differentiate which ones are good and which ones are bad when it comes to manufacturing. So I have a little bit better peace of mind, especially like with batteries. If I'm buying batteries from Japan, I know they're going to be better batteries. They're going to last longer, they're going to hold a charge longer, they're going to be more true to the power output that's advertised in general, with exceptions, but in general, than batteries made in China. And that may be part of the problem here. We've got a device made in China that does what it says it can do, but only under certain circumstances. Now, here are the performance numbers from ATTO on the USB SATA, Silverstone interface. And you can see we're averaging about 530 megabytes a second on the reads and 500 on the writes. So with that in mind, just put that aside here for a minute. Let's run the H2 TestW software and fill up this drive. Select the target drive, will be this one. And let's compare how long this is going to take. And once again, the total capacity is slightly different because of the NTFS file system, but it's just like 100 megabytes. And when we're dealing with hundreds of thousands of megabytes, it's insignificant. So that's normal, no problem. And it starts right away saying it should take about 21 minutes. Let's keep an eye on it. The last one took 1 hour and 20. And let's see where we go with this. I'd be very curious because we're in a similar capacity. We don't have to deal with a cable. And you could certainly add a USB extension cable on if you really wanted to. And an adapter to go to USB Type-C is super easy too. So that's not really a game changer here that's going to make a difference. And I'd be very curious to know if this slows down as much as the ORICO drive did. So this is looking at 314 312 megabytes a second, and as it heats up, you'll see that number starts to drop. So if it was doing 500, if it drops to 250 or below, then it'll be at half speed, just like the ORICO was. And that means it's just sort of a universal problem with this type of storage in the current state of evolution of where we are today, that may be nothing to hold against ORICO, and it may be all similar products from all manufacturers, regardless of who makes it. We can expect the same kind of performance in that type of use case. But I want to know, so we'll give it a shot, see what it does. You know, if it stays at 300 megabytes a second, that's good. That'll actually be better. But if it continues to drop and it goes to like below 250, you know, then it's probably going to take over an hour. So it's already adjusted, said now it's going to take 24 and a half minutes. And the ORICO drive said the same exact thing. If there's not a big time difference, then why spend the extra money if you can build something that's 500 gigs for less money, and ultimately the only difference then is the package size, right? The ORICO drive is very small. You can stick it in a pocket. It's much, much smaller than the Silverstone, but the Silverstone's upgradable. And if at the end of the day they both take the same amount of time to fill them up, then the only advantage in the ORICO drive is if you're moving smaller files, or moving files in smaller batches. And this is why I run into such a frustration when people want to know what's the best fill in the blank. Well, for the way some people use their external storage, the ORICO drive is the best. For the way other people use their external storage, that's a waste of money. So one person's best may be another person's worst. And without knowing that person and knowing them well, it's impossible to tell them what's best for them. And furthermore, it can be misconstrued by other audience members if we've got 994 people watching. And Joe Schmo says, hey, which one of these is best? And I know Joe Schmo, and I tell Joe, for you, this one is better. And then the other 900 and whatever people go, oh, he said that one's better. And they start saying, Carey said that one was better. No. It was only better for Joe Schmo. And that's how the miscommunication, misinterpretation of the information, which then gets repeated back out as though it's fact when it wasn't interpreted right by the person listening. That's part of the problem with the internet. And then those people go out and they spout this information off because they saw it on video and this is what he said, but they didn't quite hear and comprehend everything that was said correctly. So I'd rather not answer those questions because it creates confusion even if I could answer it, which then propagates false information, and I don't want to be responsible for that. Lotto Win has contributed $25. He says, Carey, during the show, it was easy to click on your Amazon link below and purchase my new gaming monitor for over $900. I'm glad your loyal fans have this convenient alternative method to donate. Right on, Lotto Win. Thank you for that. Yeah, I appreciate that. If you make a purchase at Amazon, regardless of what it is, if you use one of my links that takes you to Amazon, like in my video notes, there may be a product that takes you to Amazon. Once the link takes you to Amazon, if you don't leave Amazon, if you stay in that browser window and go to search and type in whatever it is you want to buy, or go to your wish list or your shopping cart, whatever you add to the cart and purchase, I make a small commission from. And it doesn't matter if it's a $5 item or a $5,000 item. Individually, these doesn't pay much, but when everybody does it, it adds up, and some months can be more money from Amazon commissions than from what YouTube pays me. And it's a great way to show support for the channel. And while I don't see who's buying what, I don't know who's buying, who's making purchases, it's all private. I can see what was purchased, but not who purchased it. And if enough people do that, it's a great way to help, again, keep me free of sponsorship. And I really like the independence of this channel, where I'm not having to worry about offending a sponsor or a potential sponsor. Like I don't necessarily have real nice things. It's not all sunshine and butterflies with this ORICO drive. So, you know, maybe having ORICO as a potential sponsor, not so much. On the other hand, they might also feel the same. I don't want to have to couch the degree to which I report my opinions for fear of a financial retribution from a manufacturer. And that then makes me less than honest for the wrong reasons. You know, saying, oh, well, if I put down the product and I lose the sponsorship, then I won't have the money to make as many videos. So that means I should be very careful so that I can keep making the videos, so in the long run it's better for the viewers. But if the quality of those videos is diminished because I can't be 100% honest, then making more videos contains less value, in my opinion. So again, by contributing to the channel through Super Chat or through using the Amazon links to make purchases, you don't pay any more. Nothing changes for you, but a small commission kicks back to the channel. Or even by using the donation button, the PayPal donation button. These are all ways to help keep the channel sponsor free. And if enough people don't utilize it, I'll go to sponsors. I mean, I need to keep the channel alive, and I have to do what I have to do. But I have to be very careful over the sponsors I pick so that it doesn't in any way, shape, or form interfere with the journalistic integrity of what I'm doing here. And that's our current status. And 2020 is going to prove a very interesting year for exploring those possibilities. I'm going to go look at a studio space tomorrow, and we'll see if it has potential or not. It all starts with a tour. Tomorrow will be my tour, and I'm very much looking forward to that. So how hot is this drive? It's warm. It's registering 24 degrees centigrade, which is 70, it's measuring 78 degrees Fahrenheit. So still much cooler by half. And what's our performance numbers drop to? I can't see it. It's pretty level at 301 megabytes a second. Now, if it can stay steady at 300 megabytes a second, that means it's writing 3 times faster than the more expensive NVMe version. There's something for you to chew on, huh? So we've already written 168 gigs of data out of 500. And it's taken just over 9 minutes for that to occur. And this is a real good way of explaining why you can't put too much faith in the benchmark numbers as being the holy grail. There's so much more complex testing that will very much make a real world difference in most cases of what you see in a video, like somebody reviews a product, they run the benchmarks, versus actually using the product in real life and what your experience is. And I feel that's not fair to the viewer. And furthermore, the person making the video holds no accountability. You can't sue them. You can't hold them accountable. In any way, shape, or form, they have no liability. So remember, when I'm dealing with a client, that's not the world I live in. If I recommend a product to a client and they buy it, and it doesn't perform or work the way it's supposed to, I get a phone call, and I'm expected to make it work. And if that means replacing it, changing my opinion, my advice, and going with something else, that's on me. And I have to see that through, even if it costs me time and money, if I want to keep that customer and keep my reputation intact. So keep that in mind as you watch YouTube videos or read reviews, even places like Tom's Hardware. There's no reprisal for bad advice or poor testing or full disclosure that these tests may not represent the reality of using the product IRL in real life. It may be a completely different experience. If what you use the product for is benchmarking, then you can expect the same results the reviewers got. But I don't know anybody who buys product just to benchmark it and do nothing else with it. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Gigabyte and Scythe would be great sponsors. I'd like to bring Scythe on board. Gigabyte's too big. They're too big for me. I don't think they'll sponsor me. Catherine wants to know if I changed the USB port to performance mode. No, and the reason I did that is I want to, once again, represent what the average user does, which is rip it out of the box and plug it in and see what numbers we get. Where we saw the biggest difference with changing that setting was on the Thunderbolt drive. The difference doesn't seem to make a whole lot of difference on most USB drives. So I'm not too concerned about that. It does make a small difference. But for the sake of testing in a real world environment, as I mentioned, changing the drive to performance mode is a more technical thing most end users won't do because they don't know how and they're overwhelmed with how technical that is. Even people that watch the video couldn't follow the simple instructions I gave and said, oh, my computer doesn't have that option because they didn't follow the instructions. So even people who think they're technical, some of those people were unable to figure it out. So the likelihood of someone doing that is unrealistic. I want to do realistic testing. And that's why I want to run this test on this drive, because I'm very curious if this makes more sense to go slower in order to be faster. Think about that. I've ordered some parts for an AMD 3950X build, and along with that is the Corsair 2 terabyte PCI 4.0 SSD NVMe drive with the big heatsink on it. So that is one of the systems I'll be building. That, you remember I said I'm taking some of these contributions that have come into the channel recently and rolling it into building some machines I think are going to result in some more exciting video content from most viewers who want to see this high-end stuff. That machine has no purpose. It's just to make a video with. Once that video is done, that machine will be available for purchase. So you guys know there's going to be a little shift temporarily as I start building machines for different purposes that customers are not ordering, that I'll be offering for sale. And we'll see if that's a viable thing for me to continue doing. There's only so many I can do that I can afford to do, at which point I won't be able to afford to do anymore until those sell. So it'll be a great way to buy a machine that was already built. It can be customized with putting a different GPU or any GPU or different RAM or a different amount of RAM or different solid state drive. Those are all very simple changes that can be made to customize the machine for you. And then customers aren't having to wait a month. You know, you could order it and have it shipped out within days, in theory, rather than weeks. And that helps me to create content that I think is more likely to be seen because we're using parts, at least in this case, with the Xenos build coming up and the 3950 build. Those are two really extreme machines on top of some other extreme machines that aren't quite as pretty to look at, right? There's a couple of really nice high-end machines that are going into Corsair 200R cases. And you might think, well, that's a bit bland, but that's what people want. You know, they want a sleeper. They want it to look like a normal computer, but they want it to fly past everybody else like a rocket ship. So we've got a couple of those coming up as well. In fact, one of them I think I'm going to start tomorrow. My uploads yesterday and today, or not yesterday, but the day before, was it Saturday I was live? And then today, I'm getting 0 drop frames on my upload, so that's been much, much better. Would I recommend heat sinks for NVMe drives? I just literally posted a video on that, was it yesterday? There's a little quick tips video where I address that. Please subscribe to my quick tips channel if you haven't done that. Most of the questions you guys are asking are the same questions I get over and over and over again. And I think you'll find the questions that are on your mind are already answered, and it's easier to find those on the quick tips channel. Those are all like 5-minute videos or less, most of them. And I'm trying to figure out the best way to dealing with the same questions over and over for people that don't watch all my content. So check out the Quick Tips channel. There's probably answers to questions you haven't thought to ask yet. And it needs subscribers. You know, it's compared to this channel, it's pathetic, the number of subscribers on it. And yet, it seems like a lot of people in the chat room would benefit from watching those videos because it answers a lot of your questions. So please subscribe to it. The link for the Quick Tips channel, did I put it in today's video notes? Let me see. Yeah, you see Computer Quick Tips. There's a link to the YouTube channel. Please subscribe to it, guys. I think you'd be doing both of us a favor. And Luke Greenia just posted the link, and Brandon Looney posted the link. Thanks, guys. So you can just go there, click subscribe, and you can watch the content that's been posted there. Lots of short, they're not the marathon videos. My sister will take these long videos and cut out the questions and answers and then make a thumbnail and title the video just to that one question. And it gets answered relatively quickly. They're very short and to the point. So I hope you'll check it out. Let's see, how is this computer doing? We're at 364 gigs written, and 20 minutes have gone by, and we're more than halfway through the test, halfway through the writing part of the test. And still averaging 302 megabytes a second, which again is 3 times faster than the more expensive, smaller ORICO drive I just tested, which is only 12 gigabytes in size difference. So that's not a significant difference to compensate for the speed difference here. It's significant. And so by buying the cheaper, slower drive, if we want to write to full capacity on it, it's going to not get as hot. This is definitely not as hot as the ORICO drive. And as I mentioned, it's writing 3 times faster, and I don't feel the need to put that in a cup of ice because it's so hot. It's like I couldn't hold on to the other drive for more than a few seconds. This isn't that hot. This is like, you know, in the mid 70, high 70 degrees Fahrenheit. It's, you know, not over 100 like the ORICO drive was. So what, we're at 388 gigs, so another 112 to go. And I think it's going to be a whole third faster in the writing process. It took an hour and 20 minutes, so a third of that would be about 30 minutes. Less than 30 minutes, about 26, 27 minutes, which is pretty much where this is scheduled to end. It says it's got 4.5 minutes remaining. If it's at, let's see, it's going to be at 22 minutes right now with 4:21 remaining, so that puts it at 26:21 versus an hour and 21. That's a big difference in time to move the exact, well, not the exact, but to move a similar amount of data. And this costs less. And this is upgradable. You can change that drive out to a bigger drive if you want to. Interesting. I did not know this review was going to be going in this direction. I had no idea when I started this video, because everything is unscripted, everything is live, that I was going to be running this comparison. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, there's a little thumbs up button under the video. You can click on that thumbs up, turn it blue. It's a nice thing to do for somebody. Hitting that thumbs up button is a nice thing to do for any content creator. And of course, subscribing, that's that big red button. If you click on that, there's a little bell icon that turns on notifications. Make sure notifications are turned on so that you can be alerted anytime new content is posted or when I go live, instead of wondering when does it happen. It also helps for people who aren't getting the notifications to create a Gmail account and have the Gmail account be associated with your YouTube account, because all of that's owned by Google and it all works really, really well together. And then you can just configure Gmail to forward all the incoming messages to whatever email you normally use, and you never have to use Gmail ever again. Then you should start getting the notifications. I do anticipate having regular hours, regular days and hours during the week that I'll be broadcasting live once I get a studio situation in place, but we're still really far from that. Like I said, I'm going to take a tour tomorrow and see if there's any potential there. And if there is, then it becomes a question of, there's a lot of questions I need answered, but it becomes a question of whether or not I can afford it. If all of that lines up, then I can start working in the studio, and then I can start figuring out what days and hours I'll be broadcasting, so that you'll know at least certain days of the week where I'll definitely be on, and then other days will be sort of as available. So I will have I guess what I'm trying to say is my ultimate goal is to get to a set schedule. And even with the set schedule, I will still have random times when I still broadcast outside of that. So you still want to subscribe and be notified regardless. Yeah, I think the quick tips channel is one of the best hidden secrets on YouTube right now, because I think they're very, very clear with what questions are being addressed, and the questions are being answered in most cases relatively clearly and quickly. So that's pretty hard to be clear and quick, but most of them, they're both clear and quick. There's no clickbait, so it's exactly the question that's being asked. So you know exactly what to expect when you click on it, and it's not a huge time commitment. You know, you can get through the intro, get right to the meat of it, and as soon as you start to see the standard outro roll, you can move on to the next one. And there's just some great content that I'm very proud of. And it's just a shame for me as the content creator that it's not being found by more people. So, you know, you can say you were one of the early ones if you get in there and subscribe now, because I really would love to see that channel get to be bigger than this one. It should have every reason to be much, much larger than this channel. But it's just not getting the eyeballs for some reason. And you can help change that. All right, let's see how we're doing. We've written 476 gigs. The writing speed's gone down a little bit. Oh no, so it finished the writing. I'm sorry, it's verifying now. It wrote a total of 476,000 megabytes, which is, you know, 476 gigs, 477 gigs, which is right for the 500 gig size drive. And we're in the verification. Oh, and we got some errors. Now, see, this kills the deal here. The fact that we get errors, that's definitely not good. It's saying there's an I/O device error. So what I'm going to do, that suggests to me that the drive may have gotten hot. And so what I'm going to do to that is click OK, and we're just going to verify one more time and see if it fails in the same. See, so here's what I think happened. I think the drive is overheated. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to forcibly unplug the drive, wait a second, and then plug it back in again, back into the same USB port. And it should open up and show us all those files it wrote. And now I want to hit verify one more time. But we may have run into a heat issue there. So let's see if it verifies completely this time. Having a device error is different than having a file corruption error. So just because we got an error, which first of all is unacceptable regardless. But it's a question of, is this just the device kind of freaked out for some reason, or is it that the data itself is damaged? Data being damaged, unforgivable. Device needing to be unplugged and plugged back in, I can live with it, but you still shouldn't have to do that. And to ORICO's advantage, see, you didn't see this coming, did you? Because I sure as heck didn't. To ORICO's advantage, it never failed. As hot as it got, which is more than twice as hot as this drive, and as slow as it got, it never failed. So we'll see what this does now. DHR Street Speed says, I want to sponsor your studio. Yeah, Dave, you and I need to talk. We need to get on the phone and talk about that. I need to find a studio. It's like I really can't talk about sponsorship until I know how much money it's going to cost me. And I don't know how much money it's going to cost me until I know where I can go that's going to have everything I need to be a studio. I need broadband, and it's got to be fast upload. I need security. I need to be able to have my equipment left overnight with peace of mind that nobody's going to break in and steal my camera equipment and computers, or my customers' parts if I'm leaving parts there in builds. So I need a place that I can afford the rent, and I need a place where I can ideally go in 24/7. That's not a deal killer if I have to go regular business hours. I'm not looking forward to that. I like the freedom of coming and going as I please, but that's another factor. And then I have to figure out what's all this going to cost me, and then based on that I can determine what I need from a sponsor at a very minimal level. So once I have that information, I'd very much would like to talk with you about that opportunity. But at this point, it's just premature because I don't have answers to those questions yet. And if this tour I'm doing tomorrow is not going to work out as a studio space, I don't have a secondary option. I will have to go back to the drawing board and try and think outside of the box for another solution. So that's where I'm at. In that process. But yeah, very much appreciate your eagerness and willingness to support the channel. And I definitely want to follow up with you once I have answers to these questions. He says, I get it, I'm just staying at the top of your mind. Oh, you haven't left. In fact, DHR Street Speed, he's got his own YouTube channel and he's posting some videos of successful mindsets, or the mindsets of successful people. It's really good short videos that he's doing, and it's coming from somebody who's actually done it, not somebody who's a dreamer. So if you haven't checked out DHR Street Speed's video channel, I highly recommend it. And it looks like we failed again on the test here. We have failed twice now. And that is food for thought, is what that is. There's been a timeout period. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting. I think I want to do one more thing. I'm going to unplug this from this USB port, and I'm going to plug it into the USB port above it, which I believe is slower. But in this case, it won't make a difference because the drive is slower. And I'm just curious if the drive will fail one more time. But if that's the end result, is having data I can't access, then I can't trust that drive. And as slow as the ORICO drive ran, at least I can trust it. That changes my recommendation, as you can imagine. But it's important you have the right expectations or you're not going to be happy. So there's conditions on the recommendation. But that is absolutely fascinating to me. Very fascinating. A studio addition to the house might be an option. No, that is definitely not an option. No. Again, even with a studio, I would still film here from time to time. So eventually this would be phased out, but not quickly, basically. I would still film here because it's convenient to film here. There may be days where I can't get to the studio in time, or I've got to do something for some reason. I've got to do it here for whatever reason. The studio would still be the studio, and this would still be this, and I would just bounce between them as required. And then eventually this would be phased out. But like I said, it would take at least a year or longer to phase this out, to go studio only. Mike wants to know if it's possible the drive enclosure is bad. Mike, anything's possible at this point. But I tested all of these drives when I built them, and they all tested perfectly. So I'm a little shocked that this is happening. but it's certainly fascinating. It makes for an interesting video. I certainly didn't see. I didn't see this coming. DHR Street Speed wants to know if I built a desktop used to drive a flight or race simulator like iRace. I've built computers that are used in flight simulators, but not in racing simulators, not specifically for that purpose. I helped somebody, they built their own booth kind of thing where, you know, you've got the chair and the steering wheel and 3 monitors, and it's powered by a desktop computer. But that would be very difficult to use that computer for anything other than that. You know what I mean? Because you've got a chair and a steering wheel and a gas pedal and a brake pedal. And like I said, 3 large monitors. And in fact, they were supposed to follow up with me with the whole thing when it was done. And I don't think I ever got the follow-up. But the way it was all coming together was looking fantastic. And they were reaching out to me for some advice on the parts they were going to use for the PC part of it. But I've not done anything that specific. You know, the computers I build, most of the people want to use them for numerous things. And there may be like pilots that are like, you know, I like to do the flight simulator. When I can't fly for real, I like to fly virtually. But they also maybe want to trade stocks and check their email and, you know, do everything else that people do with a computer. So when you build a machine that, you know, is in a custom enclosure like that, it pretty much limits what that machine does. And that's almost a kiosk at that point. And I don't have the time or the skill to build something that specific. You'd have to bring in a specialist or somebody. You'd have to be pretty handy yourself with woodwork to make that custom cabinet. It was very nice. It was all painted. It had racing stripes on it. The pictures he sent me was fantastic. But apart from just offering some advice, I didn't have any hand in it. THR Street Speed says, I'm building that in my basement. It's a single-use machine to learn the racetracks before I go to them. Oh, yeah, I get that. Sure, that makes sense to me. Well, the hard part's not the PC. The hard part is building that whole racing enclosure. If you reach out to me in email, I'm sure I've got the picture somewhere the guy sent to me and you might use for inspiration. It's really nicely done. And I'm already running late. We're about, I like to wrap things up around 5 p.m. Mountain Time, and we're at 5, nearly a quarter after 5. I'm really curious to see if this will pass this test. So I think once this is completed, that will wrap it up today. There's some questions as to whether or not using the pluggable NVMe enclosure with like that Western Digital Black 512 gig NVMe drive I've got, how that would compare, which would be NVMe to NVMe comparison. That's a good question, but you can see how long testing takes, and I can't get anything else done while this is going on. I need to get that power supply. Like I said, Corsair sent me a replacement power supply that I have back here, and that's going to go to the machine. As you recall, a gentleman named Martin was over here last week. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? And he brought a machine I built for him a little over 4 years ago, and it won't turn on anymore. And it turns out we diagnosed a bad power supply. This power supply had a 5-year warranty on it. and he had 10 months left on the warranty. So I reached out to Corsair, and they wanted me to take a picture of the top of the power supply that had the lot code on it, and they wanted me to send them a copy of the receipt that shows the purchase date to prove I was within warranty. I did that, and they got back to me within 15 hours of me sending that. They sent me back a response. It was probably within 12 hours. And they said, here's your RMA number. Keep all your cables. Just send us the power supply. I mailed the power supply back to them. It was like $20 to mail that back because it's heavy. And I shipped it through USPS Priority Mail. And then they sent me back a brand new power supply. Like if I went to Newegg or Amazon and bought a power supply, this is what I would have gotten. And it would have cost more than $20. So all those cables they told me to keep, those are all extra cables now because we have a whole nother full set of cables in here. And we don't get the full warranty though. We only get the 10 months remaining that apply to this specific power supply. So if I'd have bought a new power supply, whatever these go for, these are like $100, then I probably could have started over with another 5-year warranty again. So keep that in mind if you're considering sending something back for an RMA. Corsair has been very, very good to me. If I've had bad memory, bad switches on cases, bad power supplies, and that's why you'll see so many Corsair products in use on my channel, because when a customer calls me with a problem, I need the manufacturer to stand behind me and support me and provide what I need. Otherwise, if it takes too long or if I'm caught up fighting with the manufacturer, getting them to honor their warranty, I could lose the customer, or I have to fork out my own money to pay for whatever is broken. And then you see I won't use that manufacturer ever again because that will put me out of business. So Corsair has been very, very good with all the warranty issues, and I will continue to use their products, and maybe I should go after them for some sponsorship since I'm using their products anyway. But I've been very, very happy with them. They've gone, some companies, they just do the bare minimum. Corsair has not done the bare minimum with me. They have gone above and beyond. The bare minimum would have been to just send me a power supply without the cables. I had some bad Dominator RAM. I sent them a couple of sticks. They sent me a whole 8 sticks back as a whole part of a whole kit, which I still have sitting in my back office waiting for a build that could use it, like an X299 build or something like that. They have just been, I can't say enough good about them. When you're looking at pricing, and you're buying a component and you're saying, well, this one is $10 less than that one, something that's worth the extra $10 for me is that peace of mind that if something were to go wrong, they've got my back. I'm not going to have to fight them about it. And so Corsair EVGA is another one that's been really good. They're not looking for excuses on why they're not going to honor their warranty. They take care of business, and because of that, they continue to get my business. And because they take care of business, their quality control is important, because anytime they have to do that, it costs them money. So for them to stay in business, they better not have to do that too often. So by spending that extra $10, I've got peace of mind that I'm likely never going to need that customer service to begin with. When you have a company that's a little less, they may not have that support, and the quality may not be as good, because who cares? They're not going to deal with you either way. Wayne wants to know, for a fair comparison, shouldn't both drives' write cache policy be checked? No, the default write cache policy is what the average user is going to do. And by default, Windows 10 since 1809 disables the write cache policy. It disables it. So unless you go and change it, it will be the same default for both drives. So it's unnecessary to go and check that. So right now, looking at these test results where we're currently at, we're verifying all the data that's been written, and the drive had failed twice before, but they were I/O failures with the device or the USB port. They weren't data failures. If they were data failures, it would be unnecessary for me to continue this test any further. If the data's been corrupted or the data is unable to be read back for any reason, I don't care how fast or how slow the drive is or how much money it is. I can't use it. I can't trust my data to it. In this case, we didn't have a data issue here. We had a device issue. It's hard to know where that came from, if it's a USB driver issue with 3.1 with a 3.0 device. You know, is it the enclosure? I don't know. But we well passed the area that it failed, which means that that data was okay. And right now, we've read back about half the drive, about 250 gigs. It's taken 13 minutes to read half the drive. So we probably have another 13 minutes, 12, 13 minutes to go. And we're averaging about the same speed. Before at the writes, we were about 300 megabytes a second. On the reads, after this thing is heated up a little bit, we're at 315. If this drive were mounted internally directly to an M2 slot in your computer, it would run at about 550. So the USB is really what's slowing it down here, or the enclosure in the way that it's transferring the data. However, that is a lot faster than most USB drives you guys use. Now, I will buy some fast SanDisk Extreme Pro USB flash drives, which can see these kind of numbers, but they don't have 500 gig capacity. They're 64 gigs, 128 gigs, or 256 gigs. That's about as big as they make them right now in the Extreme Pro line that runs that fast. That's, you know, this big. Josh McLeod's contributed $20.99 Canadian. He says, hey, Carey, haven't contributed in a while. Happy New Year. Hey, thank you, Josh. Thanks for supporting the channel. Did you keep copies of the receipts for the products you purchase? I don't purchase products on behalf of my customers. I don't do that. I don't sell product. Customers, when you log in to Amazon or Newegg, they keep your receipts for you forever. So if you ever need to go back and look up a receipt for a purchase, you just sign in with your login for the website that you made the purchase from, and all the websites have your history. Everybody does it now, not just the big guys. You know, B&H Photo, pretty much everybody. If you sign in, you can see your entire account history, and there you can see your past purchases and view your invoice and print it out again if you need to. I don't purchase products for customers. I don't sell products to customers. Sharon Idle has contributed £1 and 1p. Thank you, Sharon. Thanks for supporting the channel. Okay, Cordius Technology says, do you purchase from Micro Center? There are no Micro Centers in Phoenix. I don't think there's any in Arizona at all, but certainly not in Phoenix. I wouldn't like to purchase retail anyway. Like, I see sometimes deals coming from Best Buy, but I won't buy from them. I much prefer, when I need parts, I order from Amazon or Newegg or B&H Photo. I have consistent customer service there. I don't have to deal with, waiting in a line or trying to find somebody to help me or finding out they're out of stock, come back next week, or let me call around to 16 other stores and you can drive across town because they have one over there. No, I don't do that. Not enough time to mess around like that. So we're almost done with the test here. Looks like we've got, let's see. Got about 7 minutes left. We've read back about 340 gigs of data so far without any problems. That's good, good, good. Oystein has contributed 100 Norwegian kroner. Thank you so much for your contribution. In the chat, they're asking, wondering for things that are not bought from Amazon, if you have to rely upon customers having to do warranty repairs. I don't do warranty. Like, look, I don't sell components. How can I offer a warranty on something I didn't sell you? This is not an issue for me. First of all, anywhere you buy online, it doesn't have to be Amazon. They all record your history. You can always go and look at your account history. Secondly, I'm just building the computers. I'm not selling them. If you buy your parts from a local store like Best Buy or Micro Center or Fry's Electronics and you lose your receipt, that's really not my problem. I didn't sell it to you, that's your problem. I can help you get your computer up and running again. How much that's going to cost you depends on whether or not we have to purchase new parts because you lost your receipt. My warranty is based on the work that I performed. It's a labor warranty. So I'm happy to come out and change your power supply free of charge for labor. And I will even help you to do the RMA and return the power supply, and I'll take care of all that for you. But if you don't have your receipt, because you bought it somewhere to save a few bucks, and now you didn't buy it online, so you've got no history and you didn't put it away, that's not my problem. It has no reflection on me whatsoever. I can sell you another power supply, or actually I don't sell them. I could advise you to go buy another one and I'll install it at no charge if you're under warranty through me, even though that's not really a warranty issue with me. I took the parts you bought, and all I did was put it into a computer, configure it, cable manage it, optimize it, and make it right. And if any of those parts fail, that's not on me. Now for my clients, my business clients, I will have them order the parts as well, and they will order from where I tell them to order. So if we have any issue, then I will tell them to log into the site where we ordered so we can pull those receipts. So my business clients never have a problem. And the residential clients, like I said, if they go somewhere to save some money and they don't buy online and they don't have the receipt, it has nothing to do with me. Hitter72 says, Carey, your community loves what you do. Keep up the great work. Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Let's see how we're doing now. Got to be close to being done here. As I mentioned, we're going to wrap things up when this test is done. It's about 4 minutes left. It's verified 400 gigs of the, what was it, 477 I think was a total. So far so good. And apart from that weird I/O issue that we had, that we resolved by plugging into a different USB port, I would also say that we had I/O issues with this drive that we resolved by plugging into a different USB port. Remember when we tried it with the USB Type-C connector? So that may have to do with the motherboard or the drivers, or it may be inherent to these devices that they can be a little finicky to which USB port. I don't have the answer to that, but given that this drive has suffered a very similar failure as this one, and they were both resolved the same way by choosing a different USB port, I think that's interesting information to weigh when deciding which one is the better value. But I can honestly tell you, like, as far as I am concerned, if I had a choice of paying $140 for this drive that runs at 940 megabytes a second, or paying $40 less for this drive right here that runs at 300 megabytes a second, that slower drive is faster if you're going to copy a lot of data at one time. And I'll tell you what, if I want a drive of this capacity, it's probably because I need that capacity. If I'm making an Acronis image and that Acronis image is 300-400 gigs, I don't want my image being slowed down or my backup process being slowed down because the drive is getting too hot. This drive gets way too hot, first of all. That bothers me. This drive gets warm, but it doesn't get hot. So of those two, of the ORICO or the make-it-yourself Silverstone with the SATA M2 drive in it, this is upgradable, this is not. This is a little larger, this is a little smaller. This doesn't have a cable, this requires a cable. Back and forth, back and forth. There's no real clear winner here, except for me personally, I prefer that. That is faster, and I need speed. If I got to go with a device that's a little larger, and it's less convenient, but it gets less hot, but it gets the job done 3 times faster, even though it's rated as the slower drive, I don't care what it's rated at. I don't care what the benchmarks say. I want to know in reality, how long is it am I going to sit here waiting for this job I'm doing, for this task to complete? And if that task is going to complete 2 to 3 times faster for less money, that's kind of a no-brainer. So that being said, I can recommend the ORICO drive in that, in the right circumstances, it is fast. It does get hot, but not so hot as to cause any damage, but to make it uncomfortable to hold until it cools down. I like how tiny it is, and I like how well constructed it is. So it's not all negatives on the ORICO, but I may reconsider doing any reviews on future ORICO products, because when I reviewed the last ORICO product, I had an issue with it, and now I'm having an issue with this, and this may just be what I can come to expect from ORICO, and that's not good enough for me. And I don't want to call it too soon, you know. I don't want to call time of death too soon, but I'm not getting a good feeling in my gut about this company and the value system that I have. These just don't quite match up to where I could comfortably say, wow, you know, I'd like them to be a sponsor. I would not be comfortable with them as a sponsor to my channel at this point, based on the handful of products I reviewed from them. And I do appreciate that they've sent me the products and asked me to review them. That's very flattering to me, and I appreciate the opportunity. But I also have to be honest. And I'm a little disappointed because everything I read about this and saw, I was really looking forward to using this in my job, and now I don't think I will. Not in the way that I originally thought, anyway. So that completes the test, and the test took, no, wrong mouse. "25 minutes, nearly 26 minutes to read back the 500 gigs of data, which is pretty much identical to the ORICO, which read the data back at pretty much the same speed. The difference is this wrote the data 3 times faster. Where the ORICO was averaging 100 megabytes a second, this was averaging 300 megabytes a second. And I want to emphasize that that's the slower drive, and it's plugged into the slower USB port. So there you go. I don't think it gets more honest and full disclosure than that on a review, and more realistic for that matter. That is going to wrap everything up for me for today. I guess I'll have to do that power supply replacement tomorrow. Andy Kedsdorf contributed $10. He says, thank you for all of your content over the years, including quick tips. Hey, thank you, Andy, and thanks for contributing and supporting the channel. And I'll give a shout out again to everybody who's contributed during today's live stream, and that is, we'll start with Andy and Oystein, Sharon Idle, Josh McLeod, Lotto Win, Niles Vandesan, Abdul Azim Patel, Eddie Tuig, Michael Cutler, Hugh Wong, My Company Tech, Says, I'm building a client computer while I'm watching. That's cool. John Wilson, Ben Stroud, Bill Bauer, Mike Britton, James Zender, Mike Drope Sr., Mike Dane, Joe Narciso, Mari Yoel, Jose Acosta, Past Me, Bruno Antonelli, Brendan Looney, Mats Carlson, Mari again, Rudiger Luthi, Mark Drope Sr. again, David Ice, Tony Wallow, Gary Tatum, Jeremy Kramer, Cogjin and Thomas Robinson, Michael Brooks and Tristan DeBella, Russ, the PC Dr. Martin, Bearpaw, Randall Doms, Spyros DePoutnis, oh, I missed that one. He contributed €2 and says, love your content. Happy 2020 from Athens, Greece. Very cool, thank you. And David Anderson, who contributed $1.99. So thank you guys so much again for supporting the channel. And of course, special shouts out to folks like Stephen Bernstein, John Wilson, DHR Street Speed Racing, Bill Leatherland, and Peter Laycock, and all these great supporters who have really contributed above and beyond to help make this content available for everybody else. And so if you happen to see these guys in the chat, and there's others, I feel bad when I do this because as soon as I end the broadcast, there'll be some other contributor that I forgot. So I apologize if your name has slipped me in this live unscripted moment. And feel free to call me out on it if you want that credit. I'll be sure and take a moment in the next broadcast to again acknowledge you because it's well deserved and I really appreciate the support very much. And all the viewers, of course. So I'm not just some crazy guy talking to himself in his kitchen. It helps to have viewers. Thanks you guys so much for watching. I will see you all again. Ideally, at some point tomorrow, I've got to do that studio tour. If there's time after the studio tour, I'll come back live, tell you about it, and finish the power supply repair replacement that I'm doing. So that's going to wrap it up for me for now. And where's my full screen? There I am. All right, guys. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Until then, bye for now.